There was absolutely no sign of trouble on this day. It was a clear, fine day. The sky was blue, and a light sea breeze disturbed the water surface and pulled the sails. The water sang whoosh. The girl with heavenly-colored eyes happily exposed her face to the oncoming wind. Isnelda was congratulated on her birthday. Delight in her eyes and sincere emotions of joy overwhelmed her. The man presented the girl with a box tied with a ribbon. It was her 12th birthday. Isnelda hastily accepted the gift. She held the box tightly, rejoicing at the gift from her parents, and her parents laughed with her. A three-masted ship with snow-white sails cut through the surface of the sea. Happiness seemed to be painted with a brush on the canvas by a masterful artist. And it was unclear whether such a joyful day would ever happen again in the girl's life. Suddenly, the water around became dark. The sky thundered. Lightning cut through the air. The waves hit the sides of the ship, showering its deck with thousands of splashes. The girl was trembling all over. From fear, her eyes filled with hot tears. She didn't understand what was happening. Through tears, she called for her mother. The captain of the ship, shouting above the noise of thunder and the howling of the wind, ordered Isnelda to quickly go to Dad. He pointed her in the direction. His silhouette stood out against the background of the flash of lightning. The man hurried the girl to quickly follow him. Already, when the girl stepped onto the deck, she tried to grab onto something out of fear. But her hand could not find support. She ran out of fear, not understanding where or why. She was overcome with panic. Another clap of thunder completely confused her. At this time, a lightning strike hit the bow of the ship. The waves lifted the ship, trying to capsize it. The ship swayed sharply on the waves of Isnelda, losing balance, falling into the raging elements. Soon she was already going down. Her luxurious dress with lace treacherously pulled the girl to the bottom. The lungs gradually filled with water. Her clouded mind wanted only one thing: to be with her dad and mom again. The last impulse of her consciousness was a call for help. And there was only a pressing feeling, as if her body was being squeezed from all sides. So the parents of the heroine of our story died on board the cruise ship Elahayo, and all her carefree and joyful life came to an end. Many people came to the funeral, but among them there were no those who were truly sad. The bell chimed monotonously. Ding-dong! People shared rumors that the ship was completely destroyed and none of its passengers or crew survived. 2 coffins covered with a lid stood in the middle of the spacious hall. Isnelda was wearing a black dress. She was heading towards the coffins, and the people around her were whispering. They were surprised that the girl did not shed a single tear. After all, her parents died, and she behaves like a heartless child. Others thought she was simply in shock. People reasoned that the heavens were merciless. The girl's father took care of orphans, and his only daughter was orphaned as a child. But if he was a commoner, where did he get the charity? There was a rumor that it was only a matter of time before he was promoted to maester. It was said that he was a candidate for a position in the magic tower. A single man sat down next to the orphan. He asked the girl in an uncharacteristically gentle and insinuating voice to tell her uncle everything. He asked her if her father had time to say anything before he died. He claimed that he could not leave without passing on anything to his family. The girl was silent. The man squeezed her shoulder and pulled her towards him. She stuttered and insisted that she did not remember much of what happened during the shipwreck. The man asked not to tell him that she didn't remember. He shook her firmly by the shoulder and spoke firmly so that she would remember everything carefully. Uncle said that if her father left a large inheritance, or at least secret books, then he will take her to him, and she will be able to live in complete prosperity. The child's face expressed fear. Her eyes and mouth were open. Tears streamed down her cheeks, and she herself was trembling slightly. The man continued to hold her shoulder painfully with his hand. The uncle called the girl by name, bringing her out of her frozen state. She began to repeat, "I don't know," over and over again. She covered her head and ears with her hands and began to whimper. 2 men and a woman surrounded Isnelda on all sides. They asked the little girl not to close herself off from them, but to tell them everything. They were sure she heard something. They asked her who she decided to live with, but she decided for herself that she had had enough for today. She didn't want to listen to anyone anymore. Against the wall, one man held another by the collar and threatened to strangle him. Uncle understood that he knew nothing about the inheritance. The first one asked what the child was asking about. The men caused a commotion around them. Two priests walked along the carpet and carried a vessel with water and incense for the funeral ceremony for the dead. Suddenly, the younger one accidentally knocked the vessel with sacred water out of the hands of the priest, and it overturned. Water dripped from Isnelda's hair. She was sitting in a puddle of water, all wet. It was just some bad luck that began to fall on her like a lump. The priest, worried about the girl, asked if she was okay, and people around began to whisper. Our heroine's heart began to jump out of her chest. The water scared her to death. She felt herself in the sea waves that threatened to cover her headlong and swallow her into their worlds forever. At some point she could no longer breathe, and she began to call for help. Having realized a little that this was just a panic attack, the girl ran away from the Hall of Farewell to the dead. She was in a hurry to get out of here as soon as possible. It seemed that the chains would envelop her and squeeze her chest with such force that she would no longer be able to breathe. Her body was becoming heavy. It was as if forged chains were attached to her legs, preventing her from taking a step. Two men and a woman stood in a separate group. They heard the sound of falling and all at once turned their heads in that direction. Isnelda fell to the floor, but it was at that very moment that a man appeared. He stood next to her and extended his hand, offering to take her. Then everything happened as if by magic. The girl extended hers in response, looking at the man with wide blue eyes. The blonde asked Isnelda if she was okay. He was wearing a blue suit with a gray raincoat. The orphan stood up. She now looked trustingly into the man's eyes, and he asked her forgiveness for being late. Isnelda found his paleness strange, although he looked as if he had just run. The man got down on one knee in front of the girl. Water was still dripping from her dress. He rummaged around in his inner pocket, pulled out, and handed her a fairly large stone, the color exactly like her eyes. And when the mineral on the chain lay in the man's palm, butterflies with blue patterns on their wings suddenly began to flutter around. These butterflies began to circle around the child. She forgot about everything in the world and rejoiced at these bright, light, and fragile creatures. One of the insects landed on Isnelda's finger. The girl instantly felt calmer in her soul. She expressed delight at the sweet creature. The man was attaching a chain with a blue stone to the child's hair. She was a little afraid of his clear and confident movements. And soon Isnelda had a decoration on her hair. The man said that this was his birthday present to her, but she didn't even know who this person was. The girl remembered that her dad had dinner with this gentleman several times. He asked her to stand here for a while, and he asked me not to say anything, no matter what happened. The blonde hugged the child to himself. I asked him not to interfere, but the girl's uncle was rapidly approaching them. He said rudely, "Hey, you." The man introduced himself, Noah Azent. He insisted that he came to say goodbye after hearing about the death of his teacher. The rude man stopped short. It turned out that this was the same guy who entered the academy from the Crunche orphanage. The blonde was holding out a scroll of paper, claiming that from now on he is obliged to fulfill the will of the late teacher. A pale man read out the last will of the deceased, holding a scroll in front of him. The girl's uncle simply could not believe what was happening. He shouted that he did not understand why he was acting as chairman of the fund. He did not agree that he would take the entire inheritance. He believed that this was unacceptable when the daughter and younger brother of the deceased were alive. He asked what would happen to Isnelda, and who will take care of her in this case. The blonde calmly asserted that his interlocutor, as the only blood relative, was simply obliged to take the orphan in with him. But he believed that this no longer had anything to do with the inheritance. The heroine's uncle clenched his fists. From rage, he could not answer at least something articulate. He attacked his late brother's student with aggression because he appeared at the wrong time to announce the will of the deceased. A huge, luxurious living room with an interior in white tones was complemented by a piano in the center of the same color. A small table was set for two. The girl was a little afraid and a slight trembling ran through her. The man sitting opposite asked Isnelda how she was doing. The blonde was wearing a snow-white suit today. His hair was perfectly styled and his hands looked well-groomed. He leaned back in his chair confidently. The girl smiled with only her lips. She told Mr. Azent that she was doing just fine. On February 22nd, 549, Yune's 20th birthday was, and also the day she buried her parents. And this man took everything from her. The waiter carried drinks on a platter. A knife was cutting a meat steak, dishes and cutlery were clinking. The restaurant was quite crowded at that time. Their table was richly set. There was a huge lobster in the center. Chicken, eggs, salads, appetizers, dessert, sauces, candles and candelabra. Everything indicated the wealth of the restaurant guest who ordered this table. The girl delicately cut herself a piece with a knife. She said that recently her older cousin Roel passed the exam to become a judge, and Sister Bella was all worried about the upcoming engagement. The man assured Mrs. Nelda that he was her patron and not someone else, and he would like to know if everything is fine with her. The girl confirmed that of course everything was fine with her. Mr. Azant asked whether her allowance was enough. He admitted that he had recently heard a rumor that her uncle, Baron Bontar, was having some financial difficulties. The girl brought a piece of meat to her mouth. She was surprised by what was said. After all, this is the first time I've heard about this. The man thought about it. There was a pause in communication. Only the cutlery jingled. The girl was deciding whether to ask Mr. Azant now. The man had a completely unreadable look. She doubted that this ice-cold man would fulfill her request. But now there was no one who could help her like he did. Noah Azant was one of the few wealthy people who earned his wealth himself. He was a commoner without ranks or positions. Moreover, this man did not spend the money on himself. He was such a righteous man that he served as deputy general manager of the Cruncha Scholarship Fund, which supports orphans. The girl understood that now only he could help her. She fiddled with the gloves on her hands from nervous tension. She admitted that she contacted him because she wanted to ask him for something. Isnelda reminded her that in a month she would turn 19 years old. From that day on, she will become an adult, and I would like to start earning my own living by asking him for a job. The man asked her why she was so eager to become independent as soon as possible. He looked at the girl over his glasses. Isnelda claimed that she did not want to hang around the neck of her uncle and his family. After all, they took care of her all these years. But from now on, she wants to support herself. I thought it would be right to find a job on my own. But since he knew many places in the capital, then she thought that he could give her good advice. The man argued that for such a young person who grew up in a noble family, it would be difficult to find a normal and safe job. He praised her for her good intentions. He asked if she had discussed this with her uncle. The girl assured that she was going to do this later, when he agreed to fulfill her request. The man put his fork down on the table. He clarified with the girl that for now, this was only her own idea. Mr. Azant promised to come up with something. He summarized that Isnelda wants to leave home in a month and become independent. I asked if she had any wishes regarding work. The girl claimed that she agreed to any job, but I wanted it to be stable and legal. I asked if I needed permission from my uncle. The man assured that he had no intention of offering her anything illegal, and since by that time she would be an adult, he did not need permission from her guardian. Mr. Azant concluded that exactly a month later, on February 22nd, on her coming-of-age day, he would be waiting for her here. And if she doesn't change her mind, he will then enter into a contract with her. Isnelda was surprised. She asked if it was true. And under what conditions will it be? The man was already getting up and pushing his chair back with a sound. He assured that there could be no conditions, but she should think in advance what salary would suit her. The girl pouted. She understood that her reputation as a curmudgeon had taken its toll. This was typical for most rich people. The man stomped towards her. He presented her with a box. He apologized that this time the gift was not made to order, and he presented her with gloves from the new collection of the Arsenova brand. Mr. Azant opened the lid of the box. In it, on a satin pillow, lay a pair of gloves of delicate color and fine workmanship. The man expressed the hope that she would like such an accessory. The girl picked up the gloves presented to her. They were made of snow-white thin lace. Isnelda thanked the man. She stated that she had never seen such beautiful gloves. I assumed they were very expensive. The girl pressed the box to her chest with a smile, and she modestly assured her interlocutor that he did not have to give her gifts every time. Plus, they're so expensive. It looks like my father was giving me a gift. She clarified that he looked old, but it just behaves the same way. And she laughed at her own awkward joke. The gloves were neatly folded back into the box by the girl's hands. The man asked Isnelda to try on the gift, wanting to make sure they were the right size for her. The girl smiled. She refused to comply with the request, assuring that this was a gift from Mr. Azant, and of course, they should be in time for her. She placed the package on the table with a thud, and asked Mr. Azant to convey her best wishes to Ed. Isnelda regretted that she could not come to the graduation ceremony, but she was very happy for him, and conveyed her congratulations to him with all her heart. The man promised that he would convey all her wishes in words when they met. He stood next to the table, not far from his interlocutor. Her heart was beating fast. The sky was painted scarlet. Evening time was approaching. The girl thanked Mr. Azent for agreeing to meet with her today. She politely said goodbye to him. The girl was already grabbing the gate to leave the establishment. But the man called out to her. He asked Mrs. Nelda if she was happy. She turned around at his question. The wind blew her long brown hair and clothes. The sky-colored eyes were sad. In her hands she clutched the handles of the gift bag. She answered, "Of course, Mr. Azent. I am very happy." Isnelda left the territory through the gate, and the man looked after her. He noticed her beautiful lace dress, branded package with a new pair of gloves. He was amazed at how beautiful and ideal a girl's life could be. Isnelda opened the doors of the house. In the hallway, the servants only turned their heads at her appearance. They each rewarded the girl with their sidelong and hostile glance. The girl said that she had already returned, and she thought to herself that she only had 1 month left to endure. And she promised herself that she could withstand another month of this hell, in the hope of being freed soon. A girl in a yellow dress and neatly styled hair in curls screamed. So that Isnelda gives her gloves, and she began to roughly pull them off her. Isnelda's arm was covered in bruises and throbbed with pain. She pressed her hand to herself. Senya Bantar mocked that this is what a girl needs. And behind her stood Bella Bantar, watching impartially. Our heroine, straightening her hair, smiled. She expressed regret that lunch had taken a little longer. Bella claimed that no one needed her excuses and no one would listen to them. She hurried her to take off her clothes and give back what she had taken. She assured that such a sight made her feel sick. Isnelda mumbled something and began hastily unbuttoning the buttons on her fur cape. She hurried her. But then the cousins noticed the package that was in the girl's hands. Senya asked what was in her hands, recognizing the package from Arsenoff, and she snatched it from her cousin's hands. Soon the blonde in the yellow dress was showing her lace gloves to her sister. She stated with a smile that they were just right for her engagement ceremony. The girl impudently asked Isnelda, would she deign to give them away? Reminding that she took their clothes today. Reminding her that this is not the only reason she is indebted to them, that she has been living in their house for a long time. I asked her how long she planned to stay here. The man watched them from the balcony. Bella claimed that there were rumors that her uncle was a great magician, and she was surprised that his daughter could be so useless. The girl walked away with a cape under one hand and a bag of gloves in the other, her head held high. Isnelda persuaded herself to be patient. After all, one day she will leave this place. The girl just now saw the man on the balcony. She asked her father how long he had been standing there. Isnelda also looked at her uncle. He looked at her absolutely coldly, as if she were empty. Senya claimed that she and her sister were just angels, that they allowed her to enter the house only for gloves. She shrugged her shoulders and said that this house, but she noticed that they were not listening to her. She glared at her cousin. She asked how she dared to ignore her, and she slapped her hard on the chest. I was surprised that the girl seemed completely deaf. Senya wondered where it was seen that people were ignored like that, and our heroine's eyes were already welling up with tears. She convinced herself not to cry. No matter how offensive it was, everything had to be endured. A girl in a yellow dress came up and grabbed the orphan by the collar, but the guy who arrived in time grabbed her hand. He ordered Senius to stop. It was Garrick Bantar, the older brother of this family. He had masculine features, green eyes, and a straight, pointed nose. The sister asked him to let him go, but he angrily told his sister to stop intimidating the girl. The blonde blamed him for his insolence, since he imagined himself to be a knight. I asked him why it mattered to him. The guy blamed his sister for making a lot of noise in the house, and turning to Isnelda, he kindly asked her if she was okay. He adjusted the ruffle on her shoulder. The girl pulled his hand away. She assured that his sisters were just playing a bad joke with her. She asked for his forgiveness, and assuring that she was already pretty tired today, she wanted to go and rest. At this point, Isnelda turned around and walked away, leaving her puzzled cousins in the hall of the estate. Senya was furious. She shouted after the orphan that she didn't live here for nothing, and she wanted her to get out of their house as soon as possible. The guy looked after her intently. Our heroine opened the doors to her dark room. The shadow of her body fell on her neatly made bed. Isnelda took out a small chest from under the bedspread. With a thud, she placed it on the floor in the middle of the room. With a deft movement of her fingers, she opened the hidden mechanism. The lid opened with a click, revealing neatly folded contents. The girl picked up a blue mineral that was once given to her by Mr. Azent for her birthday. She noticed that its color had changed. After all, before the mineral was a different color and shone much brighter. Xenia explained to her stupid cousin that this was a magic stone, and his energy simply ran out. Isnelda was sad about this, and the cousin assured that if the owner was a magician, the stone would still shine. She blamed the one for being so stupid. It was known that a true magician creates magic with his emotions. The magic stone absorbed the power of the one who held it, changing its color and radiance. If you could create such a stone and fill it with magic, you could become a genius, and no matter where you were, you could survive alone. Isnelda clutched the stone in her hands and pressed it to her lips. I asked him to respond, and give her the strength to leave this place. The girl was sitting on her knees. She told herself that she was fed up with the anger, sadness, and emptiness that overwhelmed her. She begged the stone to respond to her call, but the mineral remained dark and dull. The orphan grabbed the chain with the mineral and threw it forcefully into the far corner of her room. He rolled on the floor. Isnelda agreed with her cousin's words, that she is completely useless and incapable of anything at all. She lowered her head in despair and sat there for a while. It seemed to her that this hell would be with her forever. There was persistent knocking on the door of her room. The voice called her name, being sure that the girl was in her room. She flinched in surprise. The tears had not yet dried from her eyes. The guy told Isnelda that it was him. The girl went to open it. The doors creaked as they opened. Older cousin Garrick stood on the threshold. Crossing the threshold, he chuckled contentedly, as if to himself. He kept his hands in his pockets. Isnelda became wary. She asked Garrick what he was doing here. He brazenly declared that he could be anywhere in his father's house. He asked the girl's opinion if this was his home. She was shaking all over. She insisted that this was not what she meant at all. The guy smiled. He said that his father would like to talk to her. Isnelda reported that she needed to change clothes. After all, these were Bella's clothes, and so she was in a hurry to return it to its owner. She promised to come down soon. The office was dimly lit by a single lamp on the table. There was also a pen, books, notes, and various business papers. The wall cabinet was full of collectible books. The girl asked her uncle for permission to enter. The man was smoking a cigar. He was aware that his niece was meeting with Mr. Noah today, and he was surprised that he learned this from third parties. Isnelda confirmed his words. She claimed that they were just having lunch. The uncle accepted her excuse. The girl decided to talk. She told her uncle that she really needed to tell him something, and she told them her decision to start an independent life without burdening them with her presence anymore. The man slammed his palm on the table. He raised a finger for emphasis. He said that she was talking nonsense. I was surprised at her statement to leave forever and live on her own, although she still can't do anything on her own. Isnelda was sure that children, having matured, no longer needed the supervision of their elders. She expressed her gratitude that he raised her until then, but she could no longer depend on him. Our heroine's uncle held his forehead with his hand. He assured his niece that she was talking about what she did not know, that the world is not so simple. Isnelda's eyes were red. She didn't know what to answer her uncle. And she understood that it didn't work out for her. He doesn't even want to hear her. Meanwhile, the man had already put out his cigar on the ashtray. I told my niece that she should stop with nonsense and get ready to go out into the world. He said that he wanted her to attend the ball on the occasion of the debut of his daughter Xenia. He was going to introduce his niece as a young acquaintance of his family. The head of the family complained of a headache. He specified that the event would take place the day after her birthday. The girl was surprised that she was debuting as a commoner. The uncle assured that no one cared about this. But then his youngest daughter burst into them. She was categorically against her cousin being sent along with her to her own debut. The man scolded his daughter for listening outside the door again. He asked her when she would start acting like a noble lady, but Xenia stated that in her opinion, this is not the most important problem now. The girl was hysterical like a little girl. She screamed that she wanted to debut alone, and he doesn't want the presence of his orphan cousin at all. The man had a hell of a headache. He held her hand, and he ordered both girls to shut up and get out of his office. Soon the door slammed behind them. Sanya was beside herself with anger. She demanded that her cousin return to the office and say that she would not go to the ball. She claimed that she did not want to see her on such an important day for herself. Isnelda assured her that she herself did not understand how this happened. She swore the truth of her words. The blonde asked her not to make her laugh. She believed that she was probably asleep and saw how to annoy her. She tried to shame her cousin by shaking her finger. Sanya adopted an arms-to-sides pose. She argued that if she could bring him, then so be it, she would allow her to come. The girl did not understand who they were talking about. The blonde reproached Isnelda for being slow-witted. She meant Edwin's soul. She asked him to invite her to the debutante ball. The girl recoiled. Sanya heard that the guy will soon graduate from the academy, and he was almost already a knight, a promising and wonderful knight from the Crunche Foundation. And her dream was to receive a ring from him at her graduation ceremony. The girl believed that if this happened, she would become the most famous debutante this year. Just the thought of it made her happy. But Isnelda was not sure that she could convince the guy. Isnelda considered this to be in bad taste, but her cousin informed her that she was now in no position to refuse her. The orphan did not want to invite her childhood friend, because she did not want to show Ed what she had become now. Sanya grabbed the girl by the hair and began to shake her. She shouted that she did not dare ignore her request and mock her. Isnelda asked to let her go, saying that she was in so much pain. She struggled, but her foot accidentally slipped. At that moment, the guy pushed the offender. He shouted at Sanya that she was up to her old ways again. My sister was indignant that he was constantly crawling out from somewhere and disturbing her. She suggested that he leave. Garrick broke up the girl. He kept his cousin under his protection. The sister continued her verbal attacks on him. She suggested that he stop popping up everywhere. She said that he was superfluous here. She was pointing her finger and telling the guy to leave now. And Isnelda warned that if she did not invite Edvin, then she might regret it greatly later. Isnelda exhaled excess emotions. She felt tired, and I wanted to lie down as soon as possible. Garrick asked the girl if she was still in touch with Edvin. His face was distorted with a contemptuous grimace. Our heroine's heart jumped out of her chest. She pressed her bruised hand to her chest. Isnelda and Garrick stood on a wooden platform, and the waves splashed below. The girl begged him to stop. Behind them stood the guy's 3 friends. The cousin held the envelope casually. He told the girl that he would give her the letter only if she went into the water. He asked what was unclear to her. The girl looked at the splashing waves. Trembling began to hit her body. Goosebumps ran down her spine. It seemed as if steel chains were enveloping her body. She began to whimper. The guys on the shore laughed at her. One said that she was a complete fool and couldn't even get into the water. Another insisted that all the girls couldn't swim. The third one found her quite cute when she started crying. The guys suggested that Garrick open the letter. They wanted to know why the girl was so embarrassed. Another said it must have been a love letter. The girl asked the guy not to do this, shaking her head. The cousin's eyes lit up with an evil light. He asked why he had to listen to her stupid requests. He quickly tore the envelope and began to read. I was very surprised by the photo you sent. Only 3 years have passed. It turns out that boys grow up so quickly. I'm glad that everything is fine with you in the capital. The girl mentally asked him to stop. After all, these were the memories they shared with Edvin, and no one else dared to read it. She yelled at him to stop. Garrick thought it was a very fun activity. Clarified where he stopped. I'll send you a photo of myself, too. The guy furiously tore the paper. He shouted that she was crazy with such and such a face to send her photos to her friends. He asked that if she let her braids down and walked around making eyes, then she imagined herself to be someone significant. He grabbed the girl by the hair and began to hold her so tightly. The girl said that she was in pain and asked to let her go. The guy offered her a choice: either she jumps into the water or cuts off her hair. He pulled her scalp back, causing pain. He assured that if she chooses the second option, he will personally cut her hair beautifully. That she will forget how to send photos to all sorts of bastards. Suddenly, the girl already had a short ponytail, and the guy rudely asked her whether she had sent letters to that bastard. He barked that another bruise on the other arm would bring her to her senses. Isnelda rubbed her wrists. She timidly replied that she had not sent it, that Sanya misunderstood her, that she was so busy that she didn't even have time to think about Edwin. The guy quickly closed the distance with her. He stood over her, looming menacingly like a rock. The girl involuntarily shuddered. Garrick ordered her to be quiet. He leaned his hand on the wall behind her. He assured that in any case there was no one in this house who would take care of her except him. The girl nodded her head obediently. The guy waited for her to say that she understood. He liked it when she was obedient. Therefore, I decided not to raise my hands against her. He grinned contentedly. The girl came to her room staggering from fatigue. She just collapsed on the floor next to the bed. Tears fell from her eyes. She made an effort, tried to hold them back, and wiped them away with her fist. The chest was peeking out from under the covers. Garrick then came so suddenly that she hid him under the bed. But if someone had seen her chest, it is unlikely that she would have escaped punishment. And now she reproached herself for carelessness. She held in her hands the first letter from Edwin. 7 years ago, after the crash that took her parents away from her, Isnelda had to part with her only friend. Edwin was the grandson of the old woman Eartha, who worked in their house. But when the girl moved to the Banter family, Mr. Azent helped the boy enter the academy. The girl thought that it would be good if she could go to study with him. After the fund began to be managed by Noah Azent, a student of the girl's deceased father, standards for orphan support have begun to return to prioritizing ability. And in order to receive worthy support, one had to have outstanding talents. But Isnelda had no abilities. Therefore, even for her, the daughter of the general director, they could not make an exception. Our heroine reread a friend's letter. He wrote, "Hello, Isnelda. I just returned to the dorm after the commencement ceremony. My neighbor is still a thorn, but fortunately it does not divide people according to their position in society. Right now, he is standing behind me and pestering me with questions. I apologized that I would finish my letter here today. In the letter, he promised to keep his promise to her. He will definitely come to meet her when he becomes a knight. I asked him not to forget and be sure to wait." Ed wrote to Isnelda very often, but for a year now she had not received his letters. She thought that if something had happened to him, Mr. Azent would certainly have told her. Perhaps I was busy or just forgot it. Sometimes the heroine imagined that the guy appeared like a prince riding a horse and saves her from this hell. After all, he was her first precious love. The girl sat and cried, pressing the envelope to her face. The girl, having cried, lay in bed on a pillow covered with a blanket. Suddenly, there was a knock on her door. The voice asked Isnelda to open the door. The door lock clicked. The silhouette of a guy appeared at the threshold of the room. The 2-room apartment was surprised by his arrival. Garrick was carrying food on a tray in his hands. He said that since she didn't come down for breakfast, he brought her a snack. The girl glanced at the tray. There were scrambled eggs, sausages, broth, and bread. She thought that this was a new reason for the guy to come today. Isnelda expressed regret that she did not feel well today. He realized that the girl was making him angry again. He brought everything to her right here. I was surprised that it was difficult to simply accept food from him. He asked the girl why she was taking so long to break down. I was surprised that she was still upset with him about his wrist. The girl only swallowed nervously in response. The guy assured her that if he had known that a woman's wrist was so fragile, he would not have squeezed it so tightly. And tears flowed down her cheeks. He blamed the fact that she was spinning around then. That's why it all happened that way. And the girl remembered a bouquet of flowers lying at her feet. He claimed that he was told that she would attend Senia's debut with her. Isnelda replied that most likely everything would be like that. Garrick suggested in this case, why not go together as partners? The girl asked him again. He claimed that she was a commoner, so he wasn't even sure. After all, it would probably be a shame if a young girl debuts without a partner. Therefore, the guy was ready to go with her, assuming she doesn't have anyone in mind anyway. The girl became sad. He barked at her why she wasn't answering. He was angry that his offer to go together did not suit her. She stuttered a little and argued that everything was not so simple, that she already has a partner. The guy asked what kind of joke this was. He couldn't remember her being close to any of the guys, and he doubted that it was Roel. The guy had already raised his fist over her. Isnelda took small, careful steps back. She answered, "Of course not." And I tried to come up with something for myself. After all, Garrick should not have gone with her. She needed a convincing excuse. And then an idea struck her. She said that Mr. Azent would go to the ball with her, that Noah Azent would be her partner. The man told his father that Senia's debut would cost them a lot. It was Roel Bontar, the eldest son of the Bontar family. He said that, in addition, The business in which they had recently invested was suffering losses. He advised me to reduce expenses for the evening. The father told his son not to make him laugh. I advised my son to ask Mr. Azent to give the girl an allowance for the next month. Roel asked him if he had clarified this question earlier. He spoke into his father's ear that the amount of Isnelda's monthly allowance was more than 2,000 mer. With this money, you could buy a title. But all this will end when the girl comes of age. In addition, she still had no idea about the amount of her benefit. And if it comes up one day, it will be bad. The father yelled at his son. He also blamed his brother for giving his entire inheritance to Azen. That his brother became a magician and became an assistant professor at the academy. And before becoming master of the magic tower, he died on the way to his daughter's birthday. After all the guardianship money and benefits would have been his if his brother had remained alive. He considered Isnelda to be responsible for the death of his brother. He thought that she should be grateful that she was sleeping under his roof. The son blamed his father for talking to Isnelda about her debut. After all, her dress alone was worth it. The man believed that the niece went to face her father, even if not completely. He asked his son if he understood what this was about. Roel clarified what his father meant. The man was surprised how he with such brains was going to lead the whole family. He asked how many people he thought were waiting for the girl to grow up. He said that Mr. Adlon was ready to pay a large sum. He showed the letter, waving it. The man did not want to let her become independent. But even if she left, I was going to ask her for every single coin for raising him. He believed that if Mr. Azent found out about everything, problems would arise. After all, having heard that the girl whom he patronized was suddenly married off, he could understand everything very badly. He told Roel to watch and remember what his father was doing. The guy stood stretched out as if in a stance. The man argued that the goose that lays golden eggs should not be hastily disposed of. Mr. Noah Azent was sitting in the scientific office, leaning on the back of an upholstered chair. A table with manuscripts, holograms, everything indicated a working process. A young guy came in to him. It was Jerry, Noah's chief secretary. He turned to his boss. In his hands, he held a folder of business papers. Jerry reported that rumors were circulating, that Baron Bantar is going to arrange the marriage, but his daughter Bella already had a groom in mind and was engaged to him. And Senia was not in a relationship with anyone. Noah said that everything was clear to him. He allowed the secretary to go, but he argued that it was impossible to leave everything to chance. Mr. Azent argued that Jerry simply had nothing better to do. The guy froze in place. His boss says that unlike some, he still has something urgent to do. I asked him to leave. When the door slammed, Noah sat down by the window and began to peer into it. It was raining outside. Soon he saw a lonely female figure in a cloak and hat. It was Isnelda. He remembered her as a little girl, so amazing and cheerful. And now her booted feet splashed through the puddles of the street. The shop door opened with the sound of a bell. A girlish voice said good day to Aunt Pidge. The woman glanced sideways at the newcomer. A young girl stood on the threshold. The woman greeted Isnelda. She was surprised, gasping how long it had been since she had seen her. The hospitable owner of the shop helpfully asked the girl if she wanted to order as usual. The girl asked for chocolate with grapes, and soon her hand slipped a bar of chocolate with 2 envelopes of letters under it. The girl thanked her in a whisper. The woman understood that the girl had a hard time. She wondered why the second son of such a family could not send a letter normally. Meanwhile, Isnelda wrote with a pen on paper. It was addressed to Noah Azent. In it, she asked him, if possible, to arrive a day earlier than the agreed time. She reported the unshakability of her decision. She also asked in the note not to worry about any gifts. The paper quickly ended up sealed in an envelope. The girl asked if any letters had arrived for her personally. The woman shook her head with a grimace. She assured that she told him that she would deliver any letter for her. But unfortunately, I never received one. The girl couldn't even imagine how busy Ed must be right now, because graduation would soon take place. The woman claimed that studying at the academy was not an easy task. Having clarified which corps the friend belonged to, she added that it was solid. The girl reported that they were coming from afar to invite the graduate, that the knight swore allegiance to the lady, and she entrusts her future to him if he gives her a ring with his name engraved on it after graduation. I thought it was romantic, like in fairy tales about knights. The girl sighed. Mrs. Pidge asked her if she still wanted to send the boy a letter. The woman advised sending a message just in case. Who knows, maybe this time the answer will come to her. But Isnelda thought that she didn't want Ed to see her like this now. I needed to look confident. Shine so that everyone can see how happy she is. After all, she had been an object of ridicule for everyone ever since Garrett cut her hair 4 years ago. Her cousins called her a stupid girl in love, but it was easy for her to endure insults directed only at her. But then people began to slander Edvan for writing her a letter. They said that the boy was simply lucky that they accepted him to study, and even gave him money. They thought it was strange that a hillbilly would study. Isnelda could not believe that it was her fault that people around her began to say such things about Edvan. Since then, the girl wrote to Edvan her fiction, for the sake of not seeing on paper only her former self. It was also to stroke my vanity. More than a year has already passed since she stopped receiving letters from her boyfriend. And today in a letter, she congratulated Edvan on his graduation from the academy. She expressed confidence that he would become an excellent knight. Isnelda sat with her head propped up over the paper, wondering what else she could write to her childhood friend. She sealed the envelope and handed it to Aunt Pidge. She assured the women that they could rely on her. The door made a Dylan, closing behind the shop visitor. The weather had already adjusted and the sun was shining. The girl unwrapped the chocolate bar and began to enjoy it. She couldn't get used to this strange taste, and she wondered if she would miss him when she left this place. A month later, the postman brought letters to the gate. He waved his hand for the owners to take the mail. Isnelda held an envelope in her hand. She smiled when she read who it was from. It thanked him for the invitation. They promised to look forward to the meeting. This was the response from Noah Azent. The hall was already full of invited people. Ladies in luxurious outfits and gentlemen danced, talked, and just had fun. The maid stood with a brush. Another was adjusting Isnelda's dress. The girl was in front of a full-length mirror. A hubbub was heard from below from the hall. The girl opened the door and looked out through the crack. The maid asked if the girl was waiting for someone, and she herself shuddered. The woman giggled and said that so much time had passed since the gentleman was so worried about the girl. Another claimed that today was an important day. She advised me to stop meaningless conversations and get to work. Isnelda walked and did not understand why all the servants were laughing so much. The maid spoke into the girl's ear. So that she doesn't worry. What will make her pretty? That Miss has blossomed like a bud that is time to be plucked. The girl did not understand what this meant and what it meant. The maid said that the girl did not have a single accessory, even gloves. Isnelda hesitated a little. She remembered the gloves, but Senia really wanted to wear them for the holiday, so she gave them to her. The girl reminded her sister that they were hers, that you should have at least asked. The eldest assured that they should have said this earlier, and now there was no point in making noise without a conscience. Isnelda then received an answer that the gloves had already been prepared for Senia. She thought there was no need to worry, and Mr. Azent shouldn't have been surprised if Senia bought the same pair. She also had more than one gift from Mr. Noah, but it would be a shame if she didn't wear one in front of him, and she thought what she should choose. Then her face lit up with a smile. Her hand took out a magic stone from a dull-colored bag. The girl held it on a chain in front of her. She thought that this was also a gift from Mr. Azent. With deft movements, she put the mineral on her hand like a bracelet. The maid was surprised how it was possible to wear such a childish trinket, but Isnelda believed that this decoration was perfectly suited for this situation, standing still like a doll against her will. The girl looked at the faded decoration. I thought it would suit her perfectly, the one who would become a laughingstock today. Sania was happy. She saw herself in the mirror and said that she looked just perfect today, like a sweet, charming aristocrat from head to toe. I thought that I would be just the perfect star of the evening. The girl was spinning in front of the mirror. After all this time she was so looking forward to her debut day. She remembered that these girls had been avoiding her a while ago. They called her a fake aristocrat who bought herself a title. But when they see her today, they won't even dare to squeak. Sania asked her older brother Roel what he thought she looked like. He clapped her and assured her that his younger sister was a real beauty today. He said that usually a relative is chosen as a partner, with a small age difference, and he asked if she really wanted him to accompany her, and not Garrick. The girl answered with disgust that what kind of bore was that brother, that he probably sits in the gambling house as usual, that he had nothing to do on this holiday. The brother reminded me that the debut was also for Isnelda. Sania was amused by how those two would dance. Roel whispered in his sister's ear that today the orphan would be accompanied by a special partner, but it was a huge secret for everyone. The girl screamed in surprise. She wondered how it was possible to marry the fat man Adlon, but her brother asked her to talk more quietly, that so far only they and their mother and father know. Sanya thought this was terrible. She knew that the man already had a wife. The man paused for a significant moment. The girl guessed that her father was simply paid for the orphan. She even felt a little sorry for poor Isnelda. Roel asked his sister not to say that everything was decided for the good of the girl. It was better for her than living in this house, listening to every rustle. In exchange, become Mr. Adlon's junior wife. Sanya told her brother that there was one problem. I thought that Garrick couldn't just take it for granted. Here the man became wary and turned his head towards the door. It seemed to him that someone was standing there and eavesdropping on their conversation. He asked, "Who is there?" But there was no answer. He ran out of the room but did not see anyone in the corridor. Roel reassured himself that this was nonsense, and a draft slammed the door. The girl hurried her brother to go down to the large hall, otherwise they might be late. The man told his sister to go ahead, and he was going to quickly check on his father and also follow her down. Senya asked him to return as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Isnelda was looking through the slightly open door at the guests in the hall, but she never saw a single blonde. But Mr. Noah Azent definitely said that he would come. She was surprised that he was still not among the guests. The girl was afraid that he might be busy and therefore could not come. The orphan was spinning restlessly. But then Cousin Senya arrived. She asked the girl to stand still so as not to drive her crazy. Isnelda turned her head towards her cousin and assured her that she was just thinking a little. She asked if she was going to the banquet hall. Senya argued that it was not proper for a lady to go out alone. She was sure that Roel would soon come to accompany her. Then she realized that the girl had no way of knowing the rules of good manners. She asked to be forgiven, snorting disdainfully that she was talking to someone who didn't even have an escort. Senya advised the orphan to ask Garrick to accompany her at worst. He would run like a darling, but the girl assured that she was fine anyway. Today's main debutante pressed her hands to her face, and Isnelda noticed how the gloves harmonized with her cousin, unlike herself. After all, in the future, a beautiful life awaited her as the daughter of Baron Bantar, and she herself will disappear from here at the end of today. The girl persuaded herself not to regret anything, that such gloves would not have suited her anyway. Her eyes filled with tears. Roel came in and asked his sister if his princess was waiting for him. She displeasedly asked why it took him so long. The elder brother asked him to forgive him. He claimed that now they could go out. As if by chance he noticed Isnelda that she was here too. He said that tomorrow she too will become an adult. The girl was surprised, and the man smiled at her and expressed his congratulations. The girl said that she was surprised that they remembered her birthday. Isnelda thought that no one remembered this. Senya assured that everyone remembered, that afterwards they will celebrate it with dignity with the whole family. And now she reminded them that it was time for them to leave. The eldest cousin walked away arm in arm with Senya into the large hall. The door opened in front of them with a creak, and Isnelda felt somehow uneasy. The older cousin wished her a happy birthday, which no one has remembered for the last 7 years. And when someone is unreasonably kind, he could be up to something evil. A man in a servant's uniform was telling Miss that it was time for her to go out too. The girl caught herself and involuntarily shuddered. But he grabbed her hand. The girl was seriously scared. The man claimed that these doors were not for her. He offered to follow him. They walked along a long and dark corridor. Isnelda found it strange that the servants called her Miss and asked her to follow them. It was strange why they suddenly decided to become polite. She also noticed that this corridor did not have access to the hall where the banquet was taking place. She doubted they were heading there. The man turned to the girl. He said that today she would enter through a special entrance, but she didn't remember that there was anything like that in this house. The man convinced her otherwise. Isnelda thought that she was being convinced of a lie. After all, although she was not considered a member of the family, she lived here for 7 long years. She studied this mansion inside and out so that she could go out without Garrick noticing. And now the girl had a bad feeling. She thought that if she allowed them to take her away, something bad would definitely happen. The girl slipped and fell awkwardly. The man asked if she was okay. She assured that she was safe. "I'm just a little unaccustomed to walking around so much in such a long dress." The servant offered to help the girl get up. He extended his hand to her. The girl looked at him with her heavenly-colored eyes. When she was already standing, the man was still holding her by the wrist. The girl thanked him and tried to free her hand. The man involuntarily blushed. While he was coming to his senses, the maids were fussing. Our heroine, lifting the hem of her dress, ran away along the corridor as best she could. The servant shouted, "Catch her!" Isnelda rushed like the wind. She realized that she couldn't let them catch her. Sweat dripped from her face. The servants were hot on her heels. The man saw the girl run into the room. He opened the doors, but he did not see the girl in the room. He started cursing. He said that he would turn everything upside down here. Another servant called the elder that he saw the open door. He promised to come there soon. And our heroine sat trembling with fear under the window of that room from the outside. She saw and heard everything through the glass. Hearing retreating footsteps, she caught her breath. Isnelda wondered who gave this order. Judging by the fact that Roel suddenly congratulated her on her birthday, he definitely knew something. The girl was sitting in the garden thickets. She understood that she could not go to the banquet hall in this state, and if she ran away, she had nowhere else to go but Aunt Pidge's shop. But her uncle could have harmed her. Therefore, it was impossible to go there. In the end, all that remained was to find Mr. Azen, the one who appropriated her inheritance and all these years got by on a penny allowance. The girl knew that Noah Azent was at least a man of his word. He could ensure her safety until he fulfilled his promise to her a month ago. She decided to quickly get out of the mansion. I decided to pick up my things first, and I also needed to change into comfortable clothes. She quietly walked up the steps. Isnelda was alarmed by the broken handle of the door to her room. She opened it carefully. The door below was also damaged. The creaking of rusty hinges made her reveal her presence. The guy immediately saw the girl. He called out to her, not even surprised that she had appeared. In his hand was a long and thick pole. The girl asked Garrick why he was in her room, and what could all this mean? The guy was holding a piece of paper in his hand. It was only then that Isnelda noticed the chaos around. And most importantly, her secret chest was broken into, and its contents were damaged or simply lying on the floor scattered throughout the room. The cousin took one of her letters from the chest in his hand. He argued that he should have asked her the same thing. He furiously yelled at her, asking why she had packed her things. The evening was already lighting up the stars in the sky. A young doorman boy stood near the central gate of the Baron's estate. Suddenly something creaked. The boy guessed that it was a magical carriage he rode even without a horse. The doorman did not think that their Baron's banquet would be attended by a noble guest, worthy of traveling on such a vehicle. Meanwhile, Mr. Noah Azent himself was leaving it, slamming the door behind him. The boy stuttered a greeting in his uniform. I asked the guest to give his name and family. The impeccably dressed blonde identified himself, but the doorman did not find him on the list. He asked for forgiveness and asked him to name his land holdings, and he immediately undertook to check everything. Mr. Noah maintained that he did not own the title. The boy was surprised. Noah Azent claimed to be a commoner. The doorman said that the guest's name was not on the list, and he said that here he was simply powerless. He asked if he had brought an invitation with him. Mr. Azent found it rather strange that the secretaries did not inform him of any invitations from the Baron, so I thought it might just get lost somewhere. I didn't believe that the Baron could not invite him. He claimed that last month he increased the allowance at his request, and he was surprised that the Baron apparently did not know gratitude. The guy at the gate was dumbfounded. A chill went down his spine. Meanwhile, Senia was approaching, accompanied by her brother Roel. She asked who this attractive gentleman was. She told Hay that if a guest came, his task was to let him through. I asked what he was doing here, and she began to sweetly tweet with the blonde, expressing her joy that he came to her debut evening. Senia abruptly approached the man. Noah asked why she was doing this. It was rude to act like that when you were too close. He asked if he could find Miss Isnelda Crunch. The girl asked why he needed this girl, that she must be getting ready. She asked how she knew everything herself, and the cold gaze of Mr. Noah gave me goosebumps. Our heroine looked at her cousin like a rabbit at a boa constrictor with the eyes of a victim, driven into a corner. There was confusion and fear on her face. Garrick was angry. The furrowed brow and the gathered wrinkle on the bridge of his nose spoke of his state of mind. The cabinet drawers were open and their contents were partially hanging from them. The guy asked if she knew that his father and sisters were planning something. The guy was sure that Isnelda herself did not want to be married off. He stepped with his boot on a group of envelopes that had been stored in the chest and were now scattered on the floor. The girl asked him again. She asked where he heard that. The guy insisted that Roel had somehow let slip a word. He believed that there was something generally wrong with this family. They argue among themselves, but they consider him an idiot. Garrick wondered why the girl didn't tell him that right away. He reminded her that she could ask him for help if something like this happened. The guy insisted that he was scratching his head all the time and thought that she wanted to run away from them. He could not imagine how much she must hate this marriage. He told her not to be afraid and to count on him. Isnelda insisted that she did not fully understand what he was talking about with her. The feeling of frozen blood in her veins, the clanging, deafening noise in her ears, did not allow her to understand the meaning of his words. Garrick, putting his hand on his heart and smiling, told the girl that now he understood, that it was worth helping her escape a long time ago. It was all because she liked him. The girl got goosebumps. The guy understood that this was precisely why she did not want to marry this pig-like Adlon, and he assured that now everything was cleared up. He told the girl to get ready, inviting her to run away together. Isnelda clutched the hem of her dress and her hands trembled. Garrick wanted her to answer him. The girl asked him to wait and suggested that he calm down a little. He demanded to know whether he was right in his guesses. The guy swung at the orphan. She sat down and covered her ears and head with her hands. Her heart was about to jump out of her chest. She said that you definitely need to run away from here. The girl was afraid of Garrick. 7 years ago, when she first came to her uncle's house, he put a centipede in her clothes because she ate one of his 8 lollipops. And 5 years ago, he brought her to some alley for a showdown between bandits. Then he left her and ran away. The girl was then able to return unharmed with difficulty. But no one opened the door for her, and she spent that night silently waiting at the gate. And no one at the estate noticed her absence. 4 years ago, Garrick's friends also joined in the persecution. Then the 4 of them attacked the girl, and what this led to was forcing her to cut her hair. 3 years have already passed since the guy began to blush while laughing at her hair, and his attitude towards the girl changed. Even touching her neck confused his thoughts. He no longer hit her like when they were children. He just grabbed with force and threw things around. Isnelda believed that if she endured everything and smiled, she would somehow survive. For some time, the guy remained happy and behaved friendly. Now he assured her that he was affectionate, so if she doesn't give him reasons to be angry, everything will be fine. And hugging her shoulders, he brought his face closer to hers. The guy told Isnelda that if she was with him, she could be calm. He kissed her on the head, and the girl understood that it was all her fault that she grew her hair, that they saw her face, that his heart fluttered. It was her fault that she received expensive gifts from Mr. Noah. In this house, she simply existed because she continued to live. The girl had tears welling up in her eyes. She reminded the guy that they were cousins. He shook his head and assured that he knew how she felt and what she was worried about. Garrick assured her that there was no need to worry about it now. He suggested escaping to Langrad. In that empire, marriages were even made between cousins. The girl felt her hands chained. She clenched her teeth tightly. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Her hands clutched the hem of her dress. She spoke, perfecting every word. That she never told him she liked him. Garrick assured that she never told him that she didn't like him, and he smiled carelessly. He claimed that he understood everything without words. After all, she was always timid and silent, but she always smiled at him. Isnelda felt like chains were shackling her chest and entangling her entire body. The guy grabbed her hand tightly. He said that he was not so ignorant as not to guess anything. The girl asked him to wait. The cousin was sure that the girl wanted to make him jealous with that letter to Edwan. Although her habit of flirting with guys infuriated him, he was ready to forgive her. He assured that they would get married soon, and all she needed was to admit her mistake. The girl saw around her only a tangle of clanging iron chains. Isnelda told herself that she couldn't let those words break her. She began to cheer herself up. It wasn't her fault or it didn't matter, so I should have just apologized and kept smiling. The guy held her by the wrist, and her hands were shaking. She told herself that she needed to do everything as usual, that you just need to endure and live another day like today. Tears dripped onto the floor from the girl's eyes. She asked herself how long she could endure all this. She didn't want to continue to suffer like this. After all, in fact, up to this moment she had to endure so much. She asked herself why she was doing this. She did not see where her fault was. The guy asked why Isnelda was crying. I assumed she was doing this out of joy. She asked him again. Garrick believed that his cousin was simply feeling emotional and smiled carefreely with all his teeth. But the girl told herself that after everything it was only her fault. She loudly begged Garrick to move away from her, wrenching her hands from his grip. The iron chains cracked and bent from the efforts of her will. The guy asked her dumbfoundedly. Isnelda repeated that he should leave her, that he disgusts her. Her eyes sparkled. The girl protested, because she never said that she liked the guy. She insisted that she did not belong to him and he would not be able to push her around as he pleased. Her hands resisted the grinding chains. Isnelda asserted in a firm and decisive voice that even if Garrick were not her cousin, she still would not have married someone like him in her life, even if it was a matter of her life. The guy shouted that she seemed completely crazy, but our heroine looked down at him with clenched fists. She screamed that he himself was crazy. Raz considers her a stupid person who is unable to fight back. For the first time, she openly expressed her opinion in person. She said he was right, that she's leaving, but now she won't do it in secret. After all, what did she have to run away from? She was going to leave here with her head held high. Isnelda said no, she screamed in his face that she decided so, and such was her will. Garrick ordered the girl to calm down. He threatened that one more word from her and he would not allow her to leave here. She replied that she didn't care what he said. She will leave here through the front door and on your own feet because that's what she wanted. The guy swung his hand at his cousin. He yelled at her to shut up and shut the door. His emotions turned into uncontrollable rage. He grabbed her hands and held her tightly. The girl screamed and struggled. The mineral from her bracelet was in front of the guy's face. Suddenly, scarlet blood sprayed out. The guy's pipe fell out of his hands, clattering on the floor. The guy held his face and swore at the girl, calling her a bitch. He saw blood on his hands. He shouted at Isnelda, how dare she hurt him? He called the girl trash. Then he began to threaten her that she was already finished. But Isnelda threw her head at his side and knocked him over onto his back. As he fell, the guy tried to grab his cousin by the hem of her dress, but she deftly dodged it. He stood up, staggering, and prepared to punch her. Isnelda tried to quickly figure out how to escape from the wounded and enraged Garrick. On the floor, she felt with her hand the pipe that the guy had previously held in his hand. Without thinking, she struck him in the temple. The guy staggered. His temple was cut into blood. Isnelda was not afraid. She was determined to fight back to the last. But her opponent fell and did not move anymore. Our heroine's hands were shaking. She prayed that Garrick would not die. But after looking closer, she realized that he was alive and had simply lost consciousness. Isnelda sat on the floor in confusion. The thought came to her that the guy might wake up soon. She thought it best to leave quickly even before he came to his senses. She quickly began to rummage around the room, picking up scattered things and putting them in the chest. Having put away her most valuable things, she decided that it was time for her to go. But she asked herself where she would go looking like this. This chaos in the room was similar to her internal state. She couldn't remove it, but that didn't matter. And no one will remove it but simply tear it into pieces. The girl sat with her face hidden in her knees and cried from moral fatigue of surviving like this all the time. There was a hubbub in the hall. Others admired and said to look who was walking there. Heels clicked on the parquet. The girl was sad. She felt those appraising glances on her again. The looks in which one could read that she was not welcome here, like stones on the pavement. She had already lived under these gazes for 7 years. She understood that she had nowhere else to go. After all, who will accept her like this now? But then she heard Senia's voice. The girl said that she bought them. I ordered it myself from the capital. Isnelda followed the voice, squeezing between people. The man assured her that he was just asking, and he thought that he shouldn't have been so angry with him. The girl asked for forgiveness. Mr. Noah Azent, and it was him, claimed that he was just curious. He assumed that the Baron was so poor that he had to send his daughter to her debut in factory ready-made products. The girl reproached him for implying that she looked like a beggar. It seemed like steam was about to come out of her ears. Mr. Noah claimed that he had seen hundreds of similar pairs of gloves, that the sight of them was already sickening. He asked for forgiveness if his words seemed rude. After all, he did not belong to the nobility. But he advised her to answer his question. Where is his companion? Mr. Azent was called by a girl's voice. Her heart was jumping out of her chest, her face was tear-stained. And on the hand, a heavenly blue magical mineral sparkled. The blonde turned at the sound of the voice and hurried to approach her. He covered her shoulders with his cloak. He said that he was going to get a search warrant. He claimed that he was glad to see her safe. Isnelda was surprised that he had been waiting here for her all this time, and she sincerely hoped that the man would not be offended by her for this. Mr. Azen asked the girl if she had been waiting for him. She looked up at him with her blue gaze in which one could drown like one in the sea. The man extended his hand. He took the girl by the wrist. Isnelda involuntarily took a step towards him, not understanding what she was doing. Mr. Azent gallantly kissed her hand. He said that it would be an honor for him to accompany her to this event. The girl's heart began to beat faster. Suddenly, the crystal on her hand began to gain color with several edges. Isnelda could not understand how it happened that the magic stone began to apologize before our eyes. The mineral began to sparkle and shimmer. The girl was surprised by this. After all, he had never responded to her before. She told herself that she could not awaken him because she herself was not a magician. Mr. Azent addressed the girl. He asked in a whisper in her ear. Could she say Tristella out loud? Isnelda did not understand and asked again. The man convinced her not to be shy, and I took it and tried it. He gently held her hand by the fingers. The stone completely turned a bright blue color. Our heroine gained courage. She took a deep breath as if she were about to dive into water, and she clearly said Tristella. Suddenly butterflies fluttered around her. A flash of light illuminated everything around. The banquet guests watched all this with their mouths open in surprise. And something unusual continued to happen around Isnelda. Butterflies fluttered, the glow went online, and very soon the girl was dressed in a chic blue ball gown, an open back, gold embroidery, and the color of sky blue. All this was complemented by a light fabric and a fluffy skirt. The girl herself was simply charming in her new outfit. Isnelda herself looked a little confused. In addition to her outfit, she also wore accessories for her neck, wrist, and hair with blue stones. And on her feet, her usual shoes were replaced by pumps with stones of the same color. The girl thought to herself what this is. She herself did not understand what had just happened. She asked Mr. Azent if it all seemed to her. And what kind of dress is she wearing? The man assured her that she should look around and see for herself. Isnelda followed his advice. It turned out that the eyes were focused on her. People oohed and awed. She said it was some kind of magic. One lady claimed that she was seeing a magician for the first time, and she praised the dress. The man asked who the girl herself was, suggesting that she was a magician of the Bantar family. He said it was a great debut. That man asked Roel how his father must have tried to arrange such an evening. The girls surrounded Xenia. One asked her if anyone in her family was a magician. The debutante claimed that she did not know about this. And Isnelda wondered what happened and how she changed her dress. She herself understood absolutely nothing. She also wondered, did Mr. Azent himself know what would happen? And he calmly drank champagne from a glass. Baron Bantar, surprised, asked his niece for confirmation that she was also a magician. He was surprised that the girl kept it a secret until now. She tried to say that she didn't know this either. He accused her of still pretending to be an innocent lamb. He assured her that she should have told him about her abilities. He asked if she wanted to destroy their entire family. The man was aware of this. That a magician is not just a goose laying golden eggs, it was a real gold mine. He couldn't believe that his niece had been hiding for 7 years. He realized that if he had found out about everything even later, he would have died in the wrong hands. He blamed her for planning to trick him. He voiced out loud that now that everything had been revealed, he realized that she wanted to escape. Now he understood her words about independence and self-sufficiency. He grabbed the girl by the shoulders, said she was like her father. His brother Argo also gave the family a damn laugh. The girl asked her uncle to wait. She insisted that she was in so much pain. He continued to shake the girl by the shoulders. The Baron's hand was grabbed by a hand in white gloves. The man let the girl go, and she was under the protection of Mr. Azent. The blonde asked if the Baron was sure that he had chosen the right time and place for such a conversation. But he angrily told the guest not to interfere in their family affairs. Mr. Noah noted that since these are family matters, they need to be discussed among the family. But it seems definitely not here. The head of the Bantar family asked the guest what he was talking about. His eyes were bloodshot from a fit of anger. Now all the guests' eyes were focused on the personality of the owner of the mansion, and their delight and admiration gave way to condemning glances and murmurs. The man only now realized his mistake and did not understand what to do now. He could not believe that he had behaved so indecently in front of the nobility. He turned around. His fists were clenched and shaking. He understood that everything was because of this bastard commoner Noah Azent, who was not even invited here, and everyone looked at him as if he had done something bad. But he considered himself a victim. Baron Bantar blamed the brat Azent for everything. If he had not appropriated the entire inheritance for himself, he would not have gone into debt. After all, if he had money, even if his business failed, he could have acquired a higher title for himself and provide a better life for Isnelda. If it weren't for Noah Azent, who stole 400,000 of his brother's inheritance from him. The Baron asked the guest for forgiveness, and he insisted that he would like to talk to Isnelda first. After all, this girl was silent all this time, which caused him immeasurable damage. Mr. Noah asked, "How much?" The Baron asked him again. Azent clarified the question. "How much do you estimate?" Bantar coughed. He didn't even know what to say. Mr. Noah insisted that the amount did not matter. "Whatever it is, Mrs. Nelda is able to pay for everything." The owner of the mansion asked what he was hinting at, and I already asked the girl if she could really hide the money. A blond man is decorously sipping a sparkling drink from a glass. The wall clock struck 9 times. Mr. Noah Azent said that in 3 hours it would be midnight. Then Mrs. Nelda will come of age and inherit all the wealth of the Crunch family. The ladies began to whisper. They wondered what could be inherited after 7 years. After all, everyone thought that the entire inheritance was transferred to the foundation. Mr. Azent explained. That scholarship funds are not just charity but long-term investments. He, of course, understood that the amount of funds would gradually decrease if they were owned by an ordinary person. But it wasn't like that with him personally. The Baron agreed with the speaker. He recognized that Noah Azent was one of the richest men in the country, surpassing even many aristocrats. But besides his wealth, he had one more feature. Not everyone knew, but 20 years ago, Noah was just a skinny orphan boy without a penny in his pocket. When asked who this boy was, Professor Argo replied that he was a ward of his foundation, and also his first student. He argued that it was very sad that orphans could not develop their talents just because of their origin or bitter fate. They were amazed at him, because the man himself had recently become a professor, and he has already founded a scholarship fund. Argo claimed that he enjoyed doing this. The man's body lay with a ritual blindfold over his eyes in a coffin, and the chairman of the fund was an orphan who had barely reached the age of majority. Noah stood at the tomb of his teacher. Then he had 400,000 and all the rights to the fund at his disposal. They said that this was impossible and assumed that he had changed his will. They whispered disapprovingly that the child would run the business. It was predicted that Crunch's fund would soon collapse. The woman asked Mr. Noah why he was refusing sponsorship. He replied that her husband had invested in the fund since its inception. Another lady claimed that many people did this, but not them. Argo Cruncha was a mage with a promising future, and they were all brought together by his genuine goodwill. The lady also said that the current state of the fund is depressing. After all, since he began managing it, the fund has become rotten and corrupt, that they participate in all private transactions and force children to compete. The current foundation now resembles a guild that only pursues profit. Noah Azent emphasized that the fund did not go bankrupt. The woman was surprised that this was the only thing that bothered him. She asked if he knew what people call him now. Mad Dog Crunch. The lady jumped up. People saw him on the throne with skulls, and at the feet of his feisty chained dogs. The lady in a fluffy lace skirt was walking away. She said she couldn't stand it anymore. She assured him that no matter what he said, he would not see their support. Soon the door slammed behind her. And now at the debut evening, Noah asked Mrs. Nelda in public, does she remember what was in the will that Mr. Crunch left 7 years ago? The girl claimed that her uncle had a copy, but she herself did not see the will. The man was holding that scroll in his hands. It said, "The seat of the president has been vacant for 5 years. At this time, his student Noah Azent will take office. All property will go to the president. If after 5 years there is any property left, the decision on its sale will remain with the president." The girl understood why everyone was so fussed on the day of the funeral. Isnelda clarified that there was a fortune left, but she didn't understand what it meant that she would inherit it. Noah began to explain what Mr. Crunch had told him, but he was interrupted. The Baron assured that all this was a sweet lie, and he knocked the scroll with the will out of Mr. Azent's hands. Isnelda was surprised at her uncle's actions. She asked him what he was doing. He sharply shouted at the girl to shut up. He couldn't believe that she fell for this blatant lie. The Baron said that according to the will that he presented, his niece would not receive even a coin from her inheritance, that he held on as best he could. He also sheltered the daughter of his now brother. The man was furious. He shouted that how dare he now show up and give the girl all the inheritance. The Baron stood in the middle of the banquet hall in full view of everyone and puffed with rage. Mr. Azent asked him if it was not enough for him. Roel, the Baron's eldest son, was horrified by what was happening. He, like no one else, understood in what light this commoner would present them now. And Mr. Noah Azent was strongly interested. Where did the payments go, not the maintenance of the girl? The head of the family and owner of the estate, Baron Bantar, sighed heavily. He already imagined what was about to begin. A man in glasses on a chain and a white suit, slowly rattling out, said, 300 mares a month. The Baron's eldest son, Roel, shuddered at these words, and daughter Senia, widening her eyes in surprise, asked a silent question. The man continued that 25,200 mare had been deposited into the account, and while Miss Isnelda grew, her expenses increased, and the amount doubled. Food and investing are also expenses. Mr. Azent summed up the sum at 200,000 mares. The guests in the hall were horrified by the announced amount and began to make noise. Some were surprised. Others argued that even studying in the Empire was not worth that kind of money. Still others wondered why the girl appeared in torn clothes. And what exactly is going on here? Baron Bantar was confused. There was a furrow of wrinkle between his eyebrows. The pupils of the eyes narrowed. Isnelda looked at her uncle with her heavenly-colored eyes, waiting for an answer from him. She clenched her fists. The girl claimed that she was given only 10 mares a month. She was absolutely sure of this. Baron Bantar asked Isnelda to listen to him. The girl remembered how her uncle assured her that the allowance was only enough for her to eat. He believed that she should be grateful to him for all his kindness and generosity. Her uncle then taught her never to trust Mr. Azent, because he was the one who stole her father's money. Isnelda yelled at him, noting that 200,000 was 200 times more. She asked how he could lie to her like that. Uncle tried to tell her something in a whisper, but the girl turned to Mr. Azent, asking him what inheritance she will receive. She said that he had already spent 200,000. She asked if she could get the same amount. Isnelda understood that with 200,000 a woman could afford to live independently, and she doesn't stay here for a minute or a second. The girl was afraid to hear the answer that there wouldn't be so much anymore, and I clarified this with Mr. Azent. He announced the amount of 100 million. Baron Bantar was amazed at what he heard. Isnelda asked Mr. Azent not to joke with her at such a moment. He said that he understood her condition, that she always considered him a miser, that he gave out 10 mares a month, but he asked me to believe him now. The girl did not remember ever calling him a miser. The man claimed that this was so, but she probably considered him that way. He couldn't believe that she had never even hinted at this situation. He could not even imagine that she did not trust him so much. The girl thought that she had experienced so much violence from members of this family. In truth, everything was violence. Senia, who was pulling her hair. Garrick, who yelled at her and grabbed her arms, leaving bruises. She understood that it shouldn't have been this way. But now it was a different story. Mr. Azent was picking up the scroll with her father's will that had been knocked out of his hands. And according to this official document, the girl now began a new life. The man explained to her the essence of the will and its consequences for the heiress, that his teacher bequeathed to give everything left to his daughter. In fact, these 5 years were an arbitrary period. But it doesn't matter now. After all, she will soon become an adult. The girl did not understand why her father made his will this way. She remembered his gentle hands and how she loved to lie on his lap and doze. Mr. Noah hesitated, searching for the right words. The Baron claimed that his brother could immediately leave all the property to his daughter. The man answered, weighing every word, that his teacher knew that after his death his brother would try to rob Mrs. Nelda, becoming her guardian only on paper. After all, according to the laws of the Empire, Mrs. Nelda was supposed to be under the guardianship of a blood relative until she became an adult. Mr. Azent stated that then. given the funds that were given for the maintenance of the girl. The family has crossed all boundaries of reason. The man claimed that he had an informant in their house and he knew about everything. But now that the girl knew everything, the uncle had no choice but to accept this outcome humbly. The pale blonde assured Mrs. Nelda that after midnight, she would receive the main amount of the inheritance, including dividends from investments in the fund. And this is more than the required 100 million. He approached the girl and, holding her by the clothes, said something in her ear in a whisper. She looked up at him with her blue eyes in surprise. The Baron could not believe his ears that his niece would receive more than 100 million. His jaw even dropped at what he heard. He asked when the girl would receive that kind of money. He assured her that she couldn't handle everything on her own. And Isnelda saw that even in such a situation he dared to ask about such things. She despised her uncle for everything. The Baron continued to rant that this is an inheritance and it should rightfully belong to all family members. He quickly walked up to Mr. Azent and knelt in front of him and began to pull him by the trousers. I asked if this was possible, but he asked the Baron to rise. The owner asked Mr. Noah to think again. The blonde exchanged an imperceptible smile with Isnelda, giving her a secret sign. Now try it. Then he told her in her ear that there was nothing in the world that could not be solved with money. So I proposed to try their power now. Baron Bantar rushed to his niece. He understood that if Isnelda inherited 100 million mares, then he could not stand like a pillar. For the first time ever, he smiled at her. He said it was hard for her, that they couldn't afford to take care of her properly, that he never said this. But he's really sorry. The niece asked in surprise what he was talking about. The Baron ordered his daughter Senia to quickly take off her gloves in order to give what belonged to Isnelda. But she began to protest. Assuring that her sister Bella lent them to her, she assured me that it was true. The man began to forcibly pull them off his daughter. I told the fool that she didn't understand anything. After all, we were talking about 100 million. He presented, returning to Isnelda the gloves he had given her. He assured her that today was the best day to wear them. He claimed that even though they sometimes fight, they are still one family. He was sure that his niece grew up to be a girl with a kind heart, like her cousins. Isnelda indifferently asked what was in it for her now. Her uncle assured her that she was also aware of the situation in their home. He assured his niece that he was ashamed of this, that he doesn't need much. He asked to borrow 10 million, or Walking would give one. He assured that since she was so rich now, it would not be such a big sum for her. The man began pointing at Azent. He expressed confidence that his niece was not like that bad gentleman. The Baron suggested that she doubt Mr. Noah's words. He knelt before her. He offered to send Garrick away so that she would never see him again. The kneeling man was joined by his son Roel. The cousin begged the girl. He assured that they regretted a lot, that he will compensate her for everything over time. I asked him to forgive me. The heroine of our story saw the looks the invited aristocracy began to bestow on the owners of the mansion, how they whispered, discussing their family scandal. She noticed how the girls had so recently admired the daughter of Baron Bantar. Now they clutched their hearts, horrified by her pettiness. Isnelda saw from the side how two noble adult men were kneeling in front of her, that before they didn't even glance at her, trying not to notice her presence at all. And she looked down on them as non-entities, and she had the opportunity to decide their destinies. Isnelda extended her hand and asked her uncle to get up from his knees, but he insisted that he did not dare raise his head in front of her. The girl assured him that she would give him 1 million for taking care of her all this time, but she has not yet entered into the inheritance, offering to discuss this issue tomorrow in a calm atmosphere. The Baron asked again in disbelief. He clarified that as soon as his niece becomes an adult, but she interrupted him, that all this will happen under one condition. She wanted him to answer all her questions honestly from now on. He stammered that she just wanted him to be honest with her. Isnelda confirmed that her uncle understood everything correctly, that she wanted to know the whole truth. But if this is inconvenient for him... The Baron interrupted the girl. He assured me that everything was wrong, that he was just confused, and he will answer all questions. The girl looked down at her relative. She asked him why he lied to her all this time. She clarified that the question concerns financial assistance from Mr. Azent. The man delayed giving a direct answer, figuring out on the fly how to justify himself. Iselda claimed that he didn't buy her dresses for today's outing. She also hears the news about her marriage for the first time. Her uncle made only inarticulate sounds. The girl asked him to answer honestly as he promised. He made a confused grimace and confirmed that all this was true. The guests in the hall began to chatter. Isnelda continued. Now she asked me to tell her why all this happened. The Baron assured his niece that all this was for her own sake. But the girl did not believe him and asked him to tell only the truth. The man insisted that he really cared about her, that he did everything only with good intentions. Isnelda arrogantly said that apparently his uncle no longer needed the million, and he suddenly changed his mind. She turned around in an attempt to quickly leave here. The Baron tried to stop her. He asked her to wait. The man grabbed and held the girl by the hem of her dress. He assured that he would tell everything, and now he will really be honest with her. And I thought that the girl seemed so tall and intimidating, just like a mountain. The Baron assured that he wanted to instill restraint in his niece. After all, honesty, such as prudence, meekness, and thrift, give a greater chance of success and make a girl more attractive. Isnelda didn't believe it and suggested that her uncle try his luck for $1 million again. The man assured her that they could not afford much. After all, how much effort he put into improving the house. She offered to try again to be as truthful as possible with her. The man began to pull his hair. He said that he had wasted everything, that the crumbs he gave her were not worth all her pain. But it wasn't enough for his wife and children. He assured the girl that he loved her, but he was not a magician to refuse his family members. He asked him to forgive and share the inheritance. He told Isnelda that it was true, that this time he was honest. He asked if she believed him. The girl replied that she believed. The man was happy. He said that while they agreed he gets $1 million, but she answered her uncle that he should not have taken her word for it. She said that she also lied to him. Isnelda asked Mr. Azent how much he charged per day of work. He replied that if she was talking about salary, then he had not worked for anyone for a long time. The girl wanted to hire him for a day with deferred payment. Miss Isnelda asked when the guards arrived that he would ask them to record the expenses of her maintenance in this house. The family surrounded my father and began to yell at him. Isnelda also reported that Garrick passed out in her room, and it would be nice if someone took care of him. Mr. Noah clarified whether these were all her wishes. She confirmed, adding that the price of services is not important to her. The flawless blonde bowed reservedly. He told Miss Crunch that he understood her and was ready to begin execution. It was already deep night. Baron Bantar's mansion fell asleep. All the guests had long since left and the windows had already gone dark. Our heroine sat over the treasures of her treasured chest, spoiled by Garrick. The scraps of letters that were so valuable to her could no longer be put together. She collected them to somehow restore order here. Mr. Azent appeared at the door at some point. He told her that she shouldn't throw everything away. He assured that with the help of magic she could return the letters to their original state. The girl turned around. She thought that the man would be busy at this time. Noah Azent claimed that he had already been released. The girl remarked to him that it is customary to knock before entering. The man pointed his finger at the doorway. He claimed that there was no door. Isnelda invited him to sit down, and she pointed to her neatly made bed. The blonde sat down on the edge of the bed. On his knees he held a white package with a coat of arms. Isnelda asked if this was his birthday present to her. He confirmed it. The man took the package by the lace handles and handed it to the girl. When the girl opened the box that was in that package, in front of her stood a sparkling chic pair of shoes with stones. Mr. Azent assured that in 6 months his order was completed by the best master of Arsenov. The shoes sparkled with stones and delighted the eye with a rich blue color. The girl held her head in surprise. She didn't understand that these were precious stones or gems. Isnelda clutched the box of shoes to her chest. It looked like steam was about to come out of her ears. He insisted that such a facial expression was priceless to him. She asked to pretend that he didn't see. The man assured that such a pair of shoes was tens of times more expensive than those cheap gloves. The girl asked him why he continued to emphasize the cheapness of ready-made goods that he had given her before. Mr. Azent insisted that such things were not suitable for a girl like her. Isnelda stood there bewildered, clutching the boxes, ready to cry right now. The man asked the girl to try on a pair of shoes for him. Soon our heroine's feet were shod in shoes with magic stones. The girl was surprised to herself. It was just amazing to feel like that, and she thought that these shoes would be uncomfortable for her. Mr. Noah asked if she liked this gift. She answered that very much so. She thought it was the best gift he had ever given her. The man asked to take care of them, because this was not a thing for one evening. Isnelda asked him if he knew what happened to his previous gifts. Azent confirmed that he knew everything. Then the girl could not understand why he continued to give her gifts, although he knew that they would be taken away anyway. I didn't understand such charity for the sake of everyone. Mr. Noah assured her that these were things she could only wear once. Jewelry, handbags, gloves, because they were unimportant. He told Mrs. Nelda that he wanted to give her the best. The girl didn't quite understand what this meant. A clock was striking somewhere far away. Ding, ding, ding! Our heroine counted exactly 12 blows. Mr. Azent got out of bed. He moved closer to the daughter of his late mentor. "Congratulations on turning 19, he said. The girl modestly thanked her for the congratulations and the gift. The man clarified how she felt. The girl wondered aloud that he had stayed here at such an hour just to ask this question. And the girl felt rich. Tangled hair, a torn dress, low-heeled shoes, and an oversized coat were revealed to people after the spell was broken. When she left the hall, the beautiful girl, as if from a dream world, disappeared. No one here looked at her anymore like she was the girl who came here for the first time. The feeling of wealth was alien to the girl, and now she only felt relief that a carefree future awaited her. She couldn't find the words, but she thought being rich was great, and now she was infuriated by the ascetic atmosphere in her attic room. Sania furiously began to tear the curtains on the windows. She screamed that this was going to be the best day of her life. She should have been the center of attention today. And everything started out so well. The ladies turned away from her and walked away. The girl asked them to stop. She considered herself a victim too. I didn't understand why everything went wrong. And I didn't see it as my fault. The servant came in and told Miss that a visitor had come to see her. She answered rudely, wondering who could bring it at such a late hour. The man was sure that it was someone not from the guards. Senia asked to say that she did not want to talk to anyone. The servant assured the miss that this man came at the end of every month. I asked her whether it was worth sending it for sure. The girl finally decided to accept. She looked out the door and saw a hooded guest. She recognized her. The plump, red-haired woman took off her hood. It all started a year ago. It was a fine, clear day. Then the girls rode in a covered carriage and chirped sweetly. Isnelda, hiding under a dark cloak and a hood, quickly walked down the street in her personal affairs. Sania saw from the carriage window where her cousin was entering. This interested her, and she thought for a while. Later, she also came into the shop. The hostess warmly greeted the girl who entered. Sania smiled. It was about that same Edwin Soul. She looked at the photo. He was such a wonderful man and a promising knight with a promising future after graduating from the academy. There was a letter in the envelope with the photo. The guy claimed that he was looking for an opportunity to meet her. He asked when she would send him a photo in exchange for his 10. I was going to come and take a photo of my dear face in person. The girl was furious. She was outraged by who her cousin thought she was, and I didn't understand why they would pay so much attention to her. Senia believed that for the girl, Garrick was the only worthy match, but not this successful and promising student of the Imperial Academy. She wrote a letter on behalf of Isnelda. I will be busy next month, so don't come. The Baron's daughter threw a bag of coins directly into the owner's hands. The woman was surprised. She demanded that from now on she bring her everything that Isnelda and Edvin send to each other. And she held out the first fake letter, already sealed in an envelope. Then Senia received an answer. The guy apologized for not finding out her plans in advance. He asked Isnelda when she would have time. I was going to come anyway. He assured her that one day would be enough. I was in a hurry to answer. The girl was soon scribbling a reply letter. She insisted that it was not worth taking days off for her sake. I was sure it would be inconvenient. Coins of payment for the service fell from hand to hand. Miss Pidge brought in boxes of gifts. Miss said that they brought gifts from the capital. Having opened them, Senia was pleasantly surprised. Such sweets could only be bought in the capital. She was also delighted by the lush bouquet of flowers, and the crystal music box was amazing. There was also an envelope with a letter. Edwan apologized for acting inappropriately, and he asked the girl not to be angry with him for this. Senia found it entertaining. The sister asked the eldest to lend her a new thing for one day. Bella remained silent and did not follow her sister's lead, and Isnelda walked around the mansion not herself with greasy hair. The cousins watched the orphan. The eldest of them noticed that the girl had become so sloppy lately. Sanya guessed that this was evident because she stopped receiving letters. She understood the reason for her cousin's depression. The girl was thinking. She held the pen and muttered under her breath that it's time to end this and wash my hands of it. She admitted to herself that she was already quite tired of this masquerade. A guy with a bandaged hand was reading a message from a girl. She told him that she had decided to get married. She said that her chosen one was a rich aristocrat, that her fiancé is against her correspondence with him. She asked him to take care of himself. She expressed confidence that he would become a wonderful knight. Sanya crumpled the letter. She yelled that the guy still continued to write to Isnelda despite Garrick's anger. The next time Mrs. Pidge brought a letter again, the girl threw the envelope aside. She said that the guy rarely began to write lately. She let the woman go, saying that she could go, but she asked to wait. She claimed that there was something else. Senia perked up and told her to quickly show her what was there. A small box lay on the table. The woman's hands carefully pulled the ribbon string in different directions. The girl unwrapped the package and took out a small red box. And when I opened it, I was amazed by its contents. Sania could not say a word from amazement. The woman asked her how much she would give her for this parcel. The girl admired the ring with a red shining magic stone. The name of the donor was engraved on the rim. Isnelda and Mr. Azent walked out of the gates of Baron Bantar's estate. The carriage and coachman were already waiting for them. When they sat down, the girl was surprised that it was so warm inside. The man explained to the girl that the temperature of the carriage is regulated by magic. Isnelda straightened her hair. The sleeves of her dress were mended. The first thing she planned to do when she arrived in the capital was to buy new clothes. But before that, she had to receive an inheritance. Noah Azent assured that if she didn't have money now, he could pay. Isnelda assured him that it was not worth it, that she is going to live on her own money. The man said that he understood and accepted her categorical position. The man said that they would arrive at the station around 11 o'clock in the morning. I asked that the board of directors be informed about this. I wished for a good job. The girl saw a device attached to the man's ear. Mr. Azent hoped that the girl was not yet tired of his endless conversations. Isnelda asked if they were not going straight to the capital. The man claimed that they would reach the station and enter the portal. He rapped his knuckles on the carriage window. He said that this method will be used often in the future, but for now it was the fastest way to travel. Isnelda looked out the window. Everything around sparkled with bright flashes. They drove up to the portal site. Mr. Azent explained that it was a magical station. Here it was possible to go to the desired place directly despite the long distance, and the tariff depended on the remoteness of the destination. The man remembered that Mrs. Nelda said that she would like to become a sorceress. He twisted the stone in the setting in his hands. The girl claimed that she would strive for this. The blonde passed her the green stone from hand to hand. He assured her that the first thing she needed to get used to was using magic stones. He advised me to listen to him carefully. The man reported that this stone allows everyone to use teleport. For it, you need to say a password to activate the magic. Isnelda specified when she should say it. Azent asked if she could see the gate ahead. He said that we need to pass them first. The clock showed exactly 11 o'clock. The carriage was wrapped in colored ribbons of magic. Everything glowed and shimmered with the colors of the rainbow. Noah explained that they were magical. Therefore, all you need to do is read the password that is written on the outside while holding the stone. Isnelda doubted that it might not work. She looked at the green stone in her palm. Azent assured that ordinary people could also use it. But even if it suddenly doesn't work, you shouldn't worry too much. Isnelda spoke the password, but nothing happened. There was complete silence. She asked Mr. Azent if everything worked out for her. The man covered the stone in the girl's palm with his hand. He said the same password, and then something flashed and sparkled in the window of their carriage. The girl rubbed her eyes from the bright light. They have already arrived. Mr. Noah Asen was telling the girl, "Welcome to Tibes." The wide central street of the capital was deserted, and between the houses there are colored flags. The city itself was huge. A small river crossed it approximately in the middle. Many shops and houses on the ground floor of buildings were visited by residents and guests of the capital. Over his head was a transparent hat. The girl was not surprised by this. She knew that this cloud dome was created by the tower's magicians to protect the capital. She couldn't believe that she was back here again. They were still in the carriage. Isnelda wondered. Why didn't the stone activate when she said the password? and she assumed that she was not a sorceress at all. Hazent assured her that this was just her first attempt, that some magicians who have just awakened their powers sometimes experience a rejection of someone else's power. The man assured her that the source of magic is our emotions, and according to ability, it originates from joy and sorrow. He explained that, however, people are not able to maintain one or another emotion all the time. This is where the method of sealing and extracting magical power using stones came from. Therefore, the magic contained in the stones is the emotions experienced by someone in the past. The girl realized that this magic stone of her late father preserves the feelings that he experienced. Mr. Azent insisted that, of course, there is a difference between using one's own and other people's emotions. The Imperial Academy of Magic ensures that all Awoken attend classes and reduce rejection. The girl asked about her case. Noah replied that usually such magicians themselves have great potential. He promised that over time she would be able to control it after training. The girl was surprised and delighted. Azent assured her that to understand others, she must know herself. He asked Miss Isnelda, does she remember how she felt yesterday when she used magic? The girl thought about it. Then she was angry, sad, and a little happy. Miss was a little embarrassed. She could not even imagine how great her potential as a sorceress was. The girl approached the fence. Through the fence, one could see a statue of a saint and monuments. The tree branches were bare. The girl's hands laid a bouquet of silver roses on the tombstone. Isnelda came to her parents' grave for the first time ever. She touched the tombstone cross. I mentally asked my dad and mom for forgiveness for not seeing each other for 7 years. The girl turned to the man standing behind her. She said that she wanted to give her parents a better place than this cemetery. She wondered whether her inheritance would be enough for this. Mr. Noah assured Mrs. Nelda that her inheritance included not only 100 million mares, but also gold, as well as some property, ships and houses. He said that in total it was about 400 million, so I didn't think there would be any problems. I asked the girl if she understood what the said amount meant. She shook her head. Azent said that with the exception of His Majesty the Emperor, among the richest people in the empire, she ranks 5th or 6th. The girl was surprised by this message. The man continued that in order to avoid unrest, an inheritance of 100 million was officially announced. Then she could be considered somewhere in 30th place. He argued that if she disclosed her real assets, they might pay extra attention to her and come with various checks. The girl was interested in the condition of Mr. Azent himself. He answered without emotion that he was in 10th place, and he claimed that this was due to what he did for the empire. The girl asked if this was true. She didn't understand whether he was joking or being serious. Mr. Azent was a strange man for a girl. He left her alone for such a long time, and she assures that it was an attempt to protect her. Isnelda still couldn't believe it. Can you really trust this person? He extended his hand to her. He said that the sun was already setting and suggested that we should return. The girl decided to watch him for now, and then decide. There was noise and commotion all around. Isnelda asked in surprise that they would actually stay at the hotel. Azent assured her that this was a necessity. He managed both the foundation and the hotel. I agreed that the hotel is not intended for long-term stays. Therefore, he assumed that she might be uncomfortable and apologized. A hotel employee held a stone in a setting on a tray. Noah told the girl that it was her room key. It was also a magic stone. Isnelda carefully took the stone in its setting. The man clarified that her chambers are on the 2nd floor. He said that he still needed to finish some work. He suggested that she pass and rest properly. The girl headed towards the stairs that led to the rooms. Mr. Azent asked her in the back if she still cared about the lack of magic. She turned around. He argued that finding the right emotion is what awakens mania. She will need to experience as many experiences and new sensations as possible. And the most important thing is to be honest with yourself. The girl felt a pain in her head. The unattainable honest life was now within her reach. She promised to try. And again the man spoke after the girl. He assumed that perhaps she would like to meet Edwin Sol. The girl froze in place. Her eyes were sad. Noah reported that the guy had recently graduated from the academy and was still in the capital. He promised to give her his contact information if she wanted. Isnelda thought about Edwin. A year has already passed since he suddenly stopped writing to her, and she wasn't sure he wanted to meet her. She didn't show it, and smiling, she told Azent that she was not yet ready for this meeting. and she asked that her place of stay in the capital be kept secret for now. Finally, on the third attempt, she climbed the stairs up to her hotel room. She walked around the room and thought to the guy that he was a brat, that he went to the capital alone and succeeded alone, although she was happy for him. But when he left, he completely forgot about his old childhood friend. She thought that Edwin had gone to achieve success in the beautiful capital, and their common childhood memories remained only for her. Now the girl mentally told Edwin to hold on. She wanted to see how surprised he would be when she got rich. The door to the room slammed behind the girl, and she was soon basking in the fragrant water of a bath with flower petals. She was surprised at such a relaxing bath. In it, the waves would not be able to carry her along and drown her in the abyss. Closing her eyes, Isnelda enjoyed the pleasant aroma. The maid asked for forgiveness, and she reminded her that the girl might become dizzy if she lay in a hot bath for a long time. She offered her help, and she kept a large snow-white bath towel ready. Soon Isnelda was dressed in clothes for the night. The maid carefully adjusted her straps, and then she began to comb the girl's long hair. When the maid covered her with a blanket, Isnelda noticed how soft it was. She felt like her whole body had turned into cotton candy. At that moment, she felt happiness. A little later, she wondered if she could really be happy. But then she brushed aside the stupid thoughts, remembering Mr. Azent's instructions. After all, to become a good sorceress, you need to be honest with yourself and allow yourself to experience emotions. She turned on her side and made herself more comfortable. The girl wondered if Mr. Azent was going through this too. After all, he is usually cold and not emotional. Perhaps he was the most detached magician in the world. And Mr. Noah Azent carried on the correspondence. He was informed that Baron Bantar wanted to communicate with him, but Azent had nothing to say to him. It looked like word had already spread, and creditors were reaching out to him. Azent considered it necessary to count everything confiscated. He now ordered the house to be searched and anything worthwhile to be taken as collateral. Workers had to be accounted for and fired to allow them to survive. Noah was asked if anything else was needed. He asked not to be distracted. He asked him to seem merciful, so he asked him to do everything without nonsense. He believed that people squeezed into a corner can sometimes run out with a pitchfork. The interlocutor was surprised how well his boss understood the human essence. Mr. Azent reasoned to himself that he too was an orphan like Mrs. Nelda. At that time, due to the war, orphanages were replenished exponentially. The imperial family introduced a law to support orphans. But the budget couldn't keep up. People forced to become guardians went on the run and forced their adopted children to work or killed them under the cover of an accident. He was personally saved by Mr. Argo. But to prevent Mrs. Nelda from getting into such a situation, he had to make sure that heiress Bantar would not abandon her. Isnelda Cruncha should have been treated specially from the very beginning. She was an heiress. Mr. Noah's interlocutor assured that, unfortunately, these were the most difficult 7 years for Mrs. Nelda. Azent wrote that he had changed his mind. He asked to inform Bantar that he would confiscate his house. He ordered that the last condition be offered to heiress. Say that if they accept it, the house will remain with them. He suggested asking one of the children to renounce. It was easy enough to take away that title and clan. The family has 4 children. There will be no shortage of them, and the choice of who exactly is left to them. Azent's subordinate accepted the order and disconnected from communication. Noah sat in his work chair with his eyes closed and took a breath. He imagined how a suitcase with things would thunder, and Garrick, whom the other children of the Bantar family especially disliked, would be thrown out of the house. Mr. Azent assured the girl that during this time he would like to assign maids to her. He said that there are those whose abilities are small, but they are good at communication, and there were those who were laconic, but knew the business well. The man asked Isnelda whom she would prefer. The girl claimed that she wanted someone more reliable. The girl was combing her hair. She was thinking about the maids, but then there was a knock on her door. She was not expecting anyone now, and wondered who it could be. Isnelda went to open the door. The lock clicked automatically. She asked to come in. 2 completely opposite maids appeared on the threshold. The plump and short one immediately opened her arms and, smiling, assured how glad she was to meet Miss. The other was thin and had a stricter disposition. She pulled Coney back, correcting him that it was not Miss, but Madam. The fat woman asked for forgiveness and greeted the mistress. She said they were here on behalf of Mr. Azent. The thin woman said that she was pleased to meet the mistress, introduced herself by the name Murpha. She said that Coney is always like this. She advised me not to pay attention to it. Isnelda clarified that they were servants sent to her by Mr. Azent. Murpha assured that if they were hired, their delayed salary would be 4 mares for an 8-hour day. Coney assured that she would be ready to work for the beautiful mistress 50 hours a day. Murpha asked her not to downplay their importance, and Isnelda was amused by the spectacle. She had never seen such noisy people before. She asked the maids what kind of work they usually do. The thin woman claimed that she could help her get in and out of the room. They were informed that she could not yet use the stone's magic. Coney claimed that she could bring flowers to the lady every morning in accordance with her wishes, also help to choose beautiful clothes, hats, and shoes. And when the girl gets tired, she will provide a general massage. Isnelda realized that she was completely in trouble with these maids. After all, when she lived in her uncle's house, she did everything herself. And now it was so strange to her that someone else was saying that he would take care of her. Besides, she was an ordinary girl who became rich at the hour of her majority. She was afraid that if they suddenly had bad intentions, she would not be able to do anything. But since Mr. Azent sent them, it means they could be trusted. Isnelda promised them 7 mares for 12 hours of work. She signed a contract with them for 3 days, and if all goes well, she will extend it. She asked if the maids agreed. Coney joyfully answered the lady for 2 that they agreed. She was going to make sure that in these 3 days the girl would not be able to live without her. The fat girl asked the mistress what her errands would be for today. Isnelda thought for a moment. First, she would like to find a house. The maid asked that this be provided to her. The girl thanked. She recalled her childhood friend. She said that she would like to look attractive. Connie assured the lady that she could rely on them. The maid asked how such a house could cost 300,000 mares. After all, there was terrible lighting and there was no place to bring a carriage. The living room was small, like a bathtub. Another insisted that the garden was tiny, and the owner could not put the house up for that price. She asked how much money a house costs without providing services to conclude a transaction. She demanded that he be truthful. Then they went shopping. The maid asked the mistress if she was comfortable with this, and Usneld was wearing a headdress with a huge visor. Then she gasped, which seemed to suit the girl, and a blouse with trousers with a high tail and a delicate dress with a deep neckline. Coney assured the lady that since everything suited her so well, it might be worth buying all the bows. Murpha pulled the fat girl back. She scolded her colleague, assuring that it was not her money, so she shouldn't talk like that. Isnelda thanked the maids. She assured that without them, she would have thought for a long time what to take from what she tried on. And if she had come alone, she would have been completely confused. The girl said that it was the same with the house, that if it weren't for them, she probably wouldn't have been able to choose anything and would have made a hasty purchasing decision. Marfa said that even if a girl is not interested in gardening, the yard should be spacious, and there should be a hospital nearby. It doesn't matter whether the owner has a personal doctor. She also argued that it is necessary to check the natural lighting in the house, so as not to spend money on artificial lighting in the future. Isnelda was surprised that there was so much to consider. Coney asked the lady not to worry. After all, that's what she had them for, and they undertook to choose the perfect home for her. The maid invited the lady to wear the dress she had chosen, but the girl said that she would like to take a little break. And then she saw one bright-colored outfit with a hood on a store mannequin and came closer, examining it with interest. The outfit was blue in color with delicate gold patterns and magic stones. Isnelda thought what a beautiful thing. It looked like a magical robe with a hood. She touched the fabric of the hem of her robe. As a child, she really liked such capes and toy wands. But the older cousin Bella then asked the girl why she was looking at this cloak, assuming that the girl wanted it. But she answered that she simply remembered her childhood by looking at him. And looking at it, the girl was surprised at how expensive it was, as many as 15 mare 200 sorrow. She thought that if she saved all year, she would hardly be able to buy it. Bella doubted what such an orphan's allowance could buy, and she was surprised that the girl still wanted it. She asked what she would do with the outfit. She scared Isnelda what would happen if she put on an outfit and people would think that she was a sorceress. After all, this was not so. And the girl will be ashamed of it. Isnelda's eyes flashed. Her hands were shaking. She clenched her fists, but she still couldn't find anything to answer to her older cousin's remark. Bella snorted. The girl, seeing her cousin's condemnation, assured her that she was joking. I called her home because she was tired. Now Isnelda remembered those times. The owner of the shop kindly asked Miss what she liked. She claimed that this was a limited collection specially created by Arsenova. The woman claimed that from start to finish it was the work of Nova's chief designer. The bow is made from the feathers of the rare blue eagle, which is only allowed to be hunted twice a year. She praised it for its lightness, thermoregulation, and beauty. She claimed that with the help of gold plating, spells of purification and protection were applied to the fabric. I asked if Miss had seen this in other stores. The seller assured that it was originally an order from the imperial family, but the client changed his mind about the color and returned it. The pre-order amount has already been paid. Therefore, they were now selling at a reduced price. Isnelda asked Coney and Murpha for advice. How do they like a magic cloak? They both approved of her choice. Murpha voted for excellent quality, and Coney for the harmony in the image of the lady. Isnelda informed the seller of her decision to buy. She asked if she could put it on right away. She answered in the affirmative. She apologized for the question and asked the girl if she was a sorceress. Our heroine smiled. She was pleased with herself and proud of her status and awakened abilities. I confidently told the seller that it was so. The theater hall was quite crowded and noisy. The stalls were crowded with spectators. The stage was decorated to resemble a city with tall buildings. Isnelda was holding in her hands the program for the play, The Temptation of Romeo. Coney assured the lady that this was the most popular performance that every lady in the capital should see. The maid assured that once it started, her mistress would not be able to tear herself away. She was sure that she should have liked this performance. And at that time, the action was already unfolding on stage. The guy was on his knees arguing with a girl in a burgundy outfit. The light poured on them from somewhere above, focusing attention on the main characters of the play. Coney quietly whispered, asking the lady her impressions. I thought the actor had real talent. She assured that other actors play on other days, but she liked this one the most. The maid regretted that she was so short and out of shape. Murpha stated that she did not like the actor's face, that he's not as sophisticated as Noah. Isnelda was surprised. She assured that Mr. Azent was not her type, that he was too strict and cold. Coney laughingly said that she likes guys with a wide back, and our heroine was already starting to have steam coming out of her ears. The maid pointed at the box and said that they were her type. When Isnelda looked at where the maid was pointing to her, she froze in place. There was a strong brunette with a girl. From the outside, it seemed like they were a couple in love. The guy whispered something in his companion's ear, and she burst into laughter and blushed. This guy seemed to be much taller than Mr. Azent. It seemed to Isnelda that she seemed to have seen this man somewhere. A brunette with wide eyebrows and delicate facial features. Taking a closer look, our heroine recognized Ed in that guy. The maid asked the mistress how she liked the final scene of the play. She claimed that she liked how the image of Romeo was revealed. Isnelda's heart jumped out of her chest. She couldn't believe it was the Edwan she knew. She couldn't understand why he was with that girl, and she reproached herself for running away again. Coney claimed that she saw the guy at least 3 times. The maid once again drew the mistress's attention, now more insistently to herself. Isnelda asked for forgiveness and asked what she had told her. Murpha narrowed her eyes. She asked the lady that she was really in turmoil because of Edwin's soul. The girl was surprised that the maid knew his name and himself. Coney agreed with her. Murpha claimed that she had met him before, that all 3 of them are from the Cruncha Foundation, that the guy is quite famous, which is why his face is so familiar to her. Coney reminded that the lady arrived here recently. Therefore, she might not know people's local news. But among the residents of Tibes, there is no one who has not heard a lot about Edwan. He was the only commoner to graduate from the Knight Academy this year. The Imperial Academy was also called the Grave of Students, because the cadets had to undergo training comparable to hell. It required excellent skills. That's why the rings that were given only to graduates were so special. And although it seemed that anyone could enter the knightly faculty, but status played a very important role in this. But now the guy was surrounded by worse rumors. Isnelda became wary and clarified which ones exactly. The maids began to point their fingers at him on the street when he walked with the girl, accompanying her to the carriage. Assuming that this is his next lover, the guy kissed his companion's hand goodbye. Murpha was ready to bet 3 mares that they were not a couple, and Isnelda bit her lips, asking herself how this could happen. Our heroine, in order not to give away her presence, abruptly sat down and the maids along with her. The guy began to look around, noticing that someone was watching him. Coney asked why she sat down so suddenly, and Murpha asked the lady in her ear whether she really liked Edvin Sol so much. The carriage moved away, rumbling over the stones of the street. The maid claimed that the lady and that knight were about the same age, and she thought that Isnelda would look good paired with him. Murpha disagreed with her colleague. She believed that the rake was not a match for their mistress. The girl asked the maid why she considered him a rake. The maid assured that he was dating a variety of girls, and in this month alone she saw him 15 times, and each with a new passion. When our heroine was already in her room taking a bath, she thought about Edvin. She couldn't wrap her head around the fact that he had become a rake. She began to console herself that maybe it was another person with the same hair and eyes, that he accidentally graduated from the same academy in the same year and with the same name. She agreed that it was nonsense. She assumed that he already had a girlfriend. But then she began to convince herself that it shouldn't make any difference to her. Murpha told the lady that Edwin began to behave this way about 3 months ago. She claimed that it was difficult to graduate from the Imperial Academy. Therefore, after graduation, some begin to lead an active social life. And during the first weeks, Edvin simply went out for drinks with his classmates. But then Noah caught the guy and scolded him in a very rude manner. But when Mr. Azent asked why he behaved this way, there was no answer. Mr. Azent yelled at the guy, but he argued that after graduation he could live the way he wanted, and Edvin left the patron's office, slamming the door. And then various rumors began to spread. They said that the guy had many fans who wanted a one-time date with him, but he chose only noble girls. Isnelda lay in the water and analyzed the situation. She thought that her friend was very busy, that he needed to focus on his exams before graduating at the end of the year. And that's why he didn't answer her all year. Now Isnelda was simply furious. She asked why the hell he was hanging out with girls these 3 months. She didn't understand girls either. And Edvin didn't even bother to write to her. What if he doesn't perceive her as a girl? Let him say it to her face. Now she considered the guy just a dumbass and an idiot, crossing him off from her meager list of friends. Edward called her Is as a child, and she is his Ed. Children ran along the seashore and carefree childhood happiness shone in their eyes. When they started fooling around, the boy fell on the sand. The girl was confused. She was sincerely surprised that he was so weak that he constantly fell. She promised that she would help him. The girl extended her hand to help him get up. The boy happily extended his hand to her. Soon she was walking hand in hand. The boy began to look at his girlfriend with an enthusiastic gaze. This embarrassed Isnelda a little, and she blushed at this. The girl realized that she had dreamed all this. She felt as if she was floating in the air. She didn't understand what was happening to her. Her feet didn't really touch the floor or the carpet. She couldn't understand why the magic worked so suddenly. But then she collapsed, uttering a cry of horror. The door to her room immediately swung open. 2 men ran in. They asked Miss what happened to her. Isnelda sat confused on the floor and scratched her head. She assured that everything was fine with her, that she was just dreaming something. She still could not understand what and how this happened to her. It seemed so strange to the girl. She didn't understand how she was able to use magic. Already at breakfast, our heroine asked Murpha to connect her with Mr. Azent. He left her a magic stone for communication, but she could not activate it, and she held it out across the table in her palms. The maid was holding a stone, and Noah Azent was already answering her from it. He greeted Mrs. Nelda. I asked how she liked the communication stone. The girl replied that she herself could not activate it. That's why Murpha helped her. She asked if he was busy now. The man assured her that he had no one now and was ready to listen to her. Isnelda told him that she seemed to use magic in her sleep. After all, when she woke up, she was flying in the air. But when I realized this, I immediately fell. But she wasn't sure how she did it. Mr. Noah guessed that she used the float spell. The girl asked if magic could be used without spells and a magic stone. The man claimed that magical power moves on its own unless the magician controls it with a spell. But if there is a magic stone nearby, she will enter it. I advised you to keep a couple of empty ones with you. Noah assured her that she should be more careful, as there was a waste of energy. He advised me to remember the levitation spell, claiming that it was one of the main ones. Isnelda promised to remember this spell. She thanked Mr. Azent for explaining everything to her. He considered it his duty. He regretted that, due to the backlog of work, he could not help her directly. He asked her not to be shy and to contact him with any questions. He promised to be in touch and said a short goodbye. Isnelda stood at the window and pondered the possibilities of the levitation spell. But in the window, she again saw a guy walking arm in arm with a new girl. She was surprised to see him again. The girl assumed that he came to watch the performance again. She and her maids were sitting at a tea table on the balcony of her room. Isnelda was surprised at such consistency in her preference for the play. She thought she could have memorized all the lines by now. She also noticed that the guy was in uniform today, assuming he wore it to look good next to the girl. Isnelda believed that he was deliberately trying to be noticeable in the crowd, and I thought that he probably didn't care about the fact that various rumors could spread about him. It seemed like he wanted to get someone's attention. The maids reasoned like this. Edvin was already an adult. Perhaps he wanted to find himself a new patron or master. But he would hardly have walked around like that if he cared. Isnelda stood up from the table. Coney asked in surprise where the lady was going. She replied that she wanted to order another drink. The maid assured that she would do everything now. But the girl wanted to go and choose herself. I asked them to stay here for now. And she pulled the hood over her head and headed towards the door. Both maids were left completely confused and bewildered. And our heroine walked all flushed. She believed that it didn't matter what the maid said. Isnelda asked the barman for a cup of grape tea. He announced the amount. I asked the girl to tell me her name so that as soon as her order was ready, I could call her. The girl thought to herself that when her maids talk about Ed, she pretends that she doesn't care. Now it was a task for her to name herself, because the surname Cruncha was too well known in Thebes. She called herself Edith Gray. The barman asked her to wait 1 second, smiling obligingly. The girl suddenly remembered Coney's assumption that Ed wanted to attract someone's attention. And as soon as I heard this, I couldn't stay there any longer. Isnelda tried to understand what was wrong with her, and the guy in the knight's uniform was already standing in front of her. The girl pulled her hood over herself and tried to leave unnoticed. But while passing by, she accidentally bumped into him with her elbow. The guy grabbed her by the waist and arm, helping her balance. He asked if the girl was okay. She pulled her hood back on. She thanked me and apologized that she had to go. Isnelda wondered what Ed could be doing here, and she really hoped that he didn't recognize her. But the guy was looking at her. He asked the girl to wait. Her heart was ready to jump out. The girl didn't know what she should say. Hi, long time no see was clearly not appropriate. The lady came in calling Mr. Saul. It was the blonde in the fur cape who came here with him. She waved her hand at him. I asked what he was doing there, and she called him to hurry up, otherwise he might be late. He asked to wait for him for 1 second. Ed asked the barman if he had a pen. The girl in the hood stood nervously nearby, and the guy scribbled a number on a piece of paper. He was soon holding it in his hand, and he said that this was his communication stone password. He asked to contact him if he wanted to see him. The knight asked her name. The girl was surprised. After all, the guy gave his code to the one he saw for the first time in his life, and even invited her on a date, while walking with someone else, and she asked why he needed to know the name. Edward argued that he still needed to know the name of the person who would call him, and he insisted on his question. The girl asked for forgiveness and wondered why he decided that she would call him. But then the barman called Edith Gray, saying that her grape tea was ready. The girl was about to turn to the barman, but the knight grabbed her hand and put a piece of paper with his number in her palm. He looked straight into her eyes and said that he would be waiting for a call from Edith Gray. The full moon was shining in the sky. The green crew was already waiting. Edwin accompanied his companion to the carriage. The lady assured that she had such a good time with him. The girl claimed that Mr. Saul could safely contact her if he needed a patron. She was sure that many would be happy to collaborate with such a talented person like him. The guy modestly replied that the lady was simply flattering him. The girl gave him a long, languid look. Then she suddenly grabbed him by the lapels and pulled him towards her, reaching out to kiss him. But the guy easily pushed her by the shoulders, preventing her fleeting emotional outburst. He looked reproachfully at the girl. He gently touched her ear. He answered, smiling, that he would look forward to meeting her again. Soon the green carriage with its crew was already moving away under the moonlight into the depths of the street, taking away the girl disappointed by such a farewell. Eden looked after her for a while until the carriage disappeared around the bend. A man in a cloak with a hood pulled up hurriedly approached the knight in uniform. He told Mr. Saul that he had been very busy lately. The guy answered, recognizing Mr. Victor, that he had not seen him for a long time. Under the hood hid the courageous face of a blond man with some facial hair. Edwin said that he couldn't even believe that such an eminent student of the tower was so interested in his personal life. He didn't even know what to think about this. Victor was confident that as a graduate of the prestigious Imperial Academy of Glorenza, Ed must live up to his title and fulfill the duties of a knight. And he condemned his wildlife. The knight claimed that he had already graduated from the academy, that he is no longer a cadet and does not do anything condemning, that he is simply meeting those who are ready to become his sponsor and choose his future career direction. The interlocutor argued that Mr. Edwin Saul, having received his graduation ring, should stop causing trouble. Otherwise, none of the members of the order will accept him. Ed asked to speak frankly. He believed that this interlocutor had been dragged to them. He reminded that the guy started a fight with an unarmed civilian, being in the status of a reserve knight, that I used to think he was special. Edwin was surprised. He asked again, frowning. He insisted that he had nothing to say to him and turned around and walked away. He asked to contact the Foundation if he wanted to talk about this. The hooded blonde begged Ed to accept Miss Larothi's proposal. After all, she could make him a knight of His Majesty. He asked to stop these reckless provocations of young ladies. The knight then asked to convey his words to Lady Vicentos, that imprisoning people and starving them to get what is theirs is not a negotiation, but a threat. And he insisted that he would never do this. Marquis Vicentos was the supreme archmage and head of the magic tower in the very center of the capital of the empire, Thebes. He was the greatest current magician in the empire. He was called the Sage of the Century, and he was revered among all the magicians of the continent. The granddaughter of the archmage, Marquise Vicentos, Larote Vicentos, was now a young lady who, like many girls, was simply crazy about the famous young graduate of the academy. She asked Edwin to be hers. Initially, the guy refused the offer due to the difference in status. The girl assured him that she wanted to help him climb higher, but then she changed strategy, and she claimed that she only wanted to become his patron, offering Edwin to become her knight. Thanks to Noah Azant, charity became fashionable among the nobles and rich, and soon it became entertainment and some kind of competition. Who will choose the best stone and turn it into a pearl? And when Mr. Azant became Edwin's patron, then he started taking him to various events. The boy observed firsthand how the rich treated donations for commoners and plebeians. 10% of them thought they were doing a good thing. 20, they were treated like cute animals or small children. Another 20 tried to improve their image and establish their position in politics. The other half had bad intentions. They wanted to use them as lovers for themselves or to please the government. The girl assured Edwin that she would fulfill his every desire as long as he was hers. She knew that the guy wanted to become part of the Imperial Guard on his own. The girl thought it was a good dream, but she thought that the guy should have abandoned her. Mr. Azant was telling Edwin that this was the first time that a commoner was being given the honor of becoming a member of the Imperial Guard. The boy didn't understand why. If he is not an aristocrat, he can graduate from the academy and receive recommendations and have everything like aristocrats. Noah believed that a commoner in the academy should not take precedence. Anyone who received the highest score must be associated with the imperial family or aristocrats. He argued that if the guy really wanted to get the highest grade, he would have to give up his career, but he would not advise doing this. After all, he was going to support the guy in the future. Mr. Azant assured that if, however, the guy did not want it, then he would not interfere or contradict. He did this on one condition. Edwin will have to do what he tells him until graduation. And for 7 years, the boy unquestioningly followed Mr. Azant's instructions. I read books, listened, memorized, accompanied at various meetings. 3 years after admission, Edwin took first place in the ranking and confidently held it. But just before graduation, one incident occurred. Edwin got into a drunken fight with a civilian on the street. It was all because of that letter 3 months ago. Rage, resentment, powerlessness, emptiness resulted in aggression and indifference to the consequences. The guy hit the wall with his fist and left that alley. The hem of his academy graduate uniform cape fluttered in the wind. He blamed the girl for bringing up only bad memories for him. He clenched his teeth tightly in anger. Edwin said that he just had someone to distract him. Full moon in the night sky. At the gates of the Levon Hotel. The guy asked the girl if she was staying here. Isnelda recalled how Edith Gray introduced herself. She was holding in her hands a piece of paper with the number of the magic stone that Ed had given to contact him. She looked at the magic stone. She knew that the stone was for communication with her. Coney's maid was always nearby, so she decided to just give it to her. After all, she herself could still use it with the help of servants. Murpha said today was the last day of probation, and if the lady wants to cooperate with them again, let her contact them at any time. On the table was a piece of paper with the number of Ed's magic stone, and next to it is a stone with 5 corners. The girl looked at these things and thought. She remembered how he gave her his password. She wondered if he pulled off the same trick with other girls. After all, the guy gave her the number without even thinking, with some familiar, almost automatic movement. Isnelda stood up from the table, and she walked up to the railing of the balcony. The girl was thinking about contacting the guy and playing a joke with him. She blamed him for trying to seduce her without even really getting to know her. But then suddenly she saw movement under the hotel gates, and I recognized Ed. She was afraid of what he could be doing here at such a time. Meanwhile, the guy noticed that a pair of curious eyes were watching him from the bushes. He asked to go out and talk openly. Ed thought about not paying attention, but every time I was faced with his goal, I couldn't concentrate on dating. He asked if he was tired of chasing a girl and spying all day long. He offered to go out to him and have fun in a fight. I was surprised that he didn't come out, and he assured that he had no other choice. He assured that he would do everything himself. Edvin grabbed another from the bushes by the head and pressed the back of his head into the road surface. But then the situation changed, not in his favor. He didn't even show it when 2 more of the same kind, hooded and with drawn swords at the ready, came out to him. The guy told himself that he did not count on this at all, and he wondered what kind of girl would be protected like that. That he gave her his password just in case, so she could contact him when she was alone. But now I didn't think at all that this would happen. Since the territory was so guarded and fenced, he suggested aloud to clean up this place, and he began to take the sword out of its sheath. Squinting his eyes and smiling evilly with a predatory grin, the guy told himself that he was ready to begin. He crossed his sword first. It was quite difficult to repel the attack of 3 prepared opponents at once. At some point, a knife was already flying at the guy, but it was not in vain that he was graduated as a knight. His preparation was enough to catch him on the fly. Now he also had another additional stinger blade in his hands. He held back the attack with one hand, and with his left he tried to sting the enemy in the body. At some point, Edwan allowed the enemy to raise his sword over him. It opened, and the guy immediately took advantage of the moment. His hand, like a snake, lunged with lightning speed. A blow to the ribs from the left threw the enemy back with force. The other 2 looked at each other. One gave a secret sign. The shorter one nodded in response. They also took out weapons. The sword of one of them glowed. Ed realized that it was an enchanted sword. He concluded that either they were connected with the magic tower, or they obtained these weapons in secret. It just pissed him off that he only had a regular sword. Edwin took a fighting position, preparing to repel 2 opponents at once. The sword of one cut the guy's cheekbone, and scarlet blood dripped from the wound in a stream. The enemy was jubilant. He continued the attack, and soon the knight, defending himself from the blows, lost his weapon. His sword burst in half, and the attacker was preparing to deliver a decisive blow to the insolent man's head. The float spell sounded, and a few seconds later the magic sword was already lying on the stone surface, and its owner was hovering in the air. Against the background of the night luminary, a girl appeared in a magic robe with magic stones. The scoundrels hurried to leave the place of their shame, picking up weapons and the tails of their cloaks. Edwin stood at a loss. The girl peered into the distance, trying to see what was happening there. She didn't know what to do. She hurried to the hotel security. She opened the doors and, in her nightgown and magic cloak, rushed out of the room. She reported that there were people fighting in front of the hotel. One of them was sure that this was another showdown between drunks, and he asked the girl not to worry about this. Isnelda assured that they had already drawn their swords and it could be something serious. The girl was eager to help separate her, but the man assured her that it was dangerous for her to go out at such a time. Then she got ready to report everything to the police officer. The man asked her to stand here. He claimed that they were accompanying her and could not leave her alone. Therefore, one of them will go and check the situation. While the men were discussing the plan of action, the girl realized that there was no time for this. But someone had to go in her place. Isnelda remembered the female servants. She quickly poked the man with a communication stone and asked him to contact Murpha through him. The girl said that at exactly 2 o'clock in the morning, near the central gate of the hotel, armed people were fighting with an academy knight. She asked me to immediately inform the law enforcement agencies, and she ran again to the balcony. She was worried about how Ed was holding his defense there. Her heart jumped out of excitement. And then she saw one of the attackers take out a shining sword. Isnelda asked herself if this was magic. She mentally asked the officers to hurry up. Then a voice asked her if she wanted to go. The girl turned back but didn't see anyone. Glowing threads rays stretched from the open door of the room. The girl asked herself what it was. Suddenly the voice asked again if she wanted to go. Isnelda asked who was there. She turned her head around trying to see who was speaking. The voice spoke again. This time he asked the girl to go to the mirror and look into it. The stone on her earring glowed brighter than its counterpart on the other side. Isnelda guessed that the magical power was absorbed into the stone. She gently touched it with her finger. And I didn't understand when it happened. The stone began to shine even brighter, taking on the colors of the rainbow in every facet. Then from blue it became almost pink and yellow. The girl's heart beat faster. She wondered how much power there was in that stone suspended from her ear like an earring. And he was already turning red-green-black. Isnelda remembered Mr. Azent's words. He argued that magical power basically moves on its own only if the magician does not control it with a spell. The girl asked herself if she could do this. She rushed to the balcony railing, clutching a stone in her hand. A hand touched the railing. Soon, bare feet were standing on the edge of the balcony railing on the second floor. My heart was ready to jump out of my chest. The girl told herself that she could do it. She squeezed and lifted the hem of the magic cloak robe. She told herself that there was magic in her. Her memory recalled how, as a little girl, she told Ed that he was so weak that he constantly fell. And then she promised him that she would help. Isnelda confidently told herself and the whole world that she was a sorceress. Her eyes burned. The magic stone was blue again, but glowed even more intensely. She cast the spell, Floatina. It seemed to the girl that her body had grown wings with feathers. She began to hover over the balcony railing. She used her hand as a steering wheel and a balance beam at the same time. Soon Isnelda was already flying confidently against the background of the night sky. The magic stone on her earring sparkled brightly. She saw her defeated attacker lying flat, face down. His sword lies nearby on the stone slabs of the paved road. When she focused her gaze on the guy, she noticed with horror the bleeding wound on his face, and she began to worry about his safety. But then the stone stopped glowing and was already faded. Having lost the magical support of the stone, the girl began to fall rapidly, losing the ability to levitate. Landing awkwardly, she fell. Having hit herself painfully, she quietly yelped and made a grimace. The girl didn't understand why things didn't go according to plan. But then her surprise became even greater. The knight began to feel her head and torso, checking her integrity after the fall. Edvin held the girl so that she would not fall again. He assessed how stunned she was by the head blow and her ability to coordinate her movements normally. The girl looked the knight in the eyes, and he seemed rooted to the ground and could not take his eyes off this deep blue. But then she realized her mistake. After all, now the guy could clearly see her face, and now she asked herself if he recognized her, that she was the same Isnelda. The guy swore and began to complain about pain in his back. He asked the girl if she was a sorceress. I asked how old she was, and he was surprised that he had never seen her at the academy. He tried to straighten his sore back, arching his entire body back. The girl answered briefly that she was 19. The guy asked her again. He became a little wary and tense. 2 other attackers were standing nearby. One thought that, whatever the case, it was good that they found her. Another thought that it was worth coming here in person for such a facial expression. Edvin abruptly picked up the girl in his arms. She screamed in surprise and protested. The guy summed up that he was the same age as her. The girl was all flushed. The knight stood before the hooded attackers. He asked if they would mind if he rescheduled their meeting for another time, but they began to accelerate with swords at the ready. Isnelda realized that the guy was now in a vulnerable position. She decided to hug his neck tightly. But the knight did not understand what she was doing and what was happening around her in general. Isnelda silently asked the stone one more time, just one more time, to work and help her. She closed her eyes tightly and tried to concentrate. And the stone on her earring flashed again. She cast a spell and soon she was off the ground and rising above the ground. She was silently surprised that her strength did not leave her as it had before. On the contrary, she felt overwhelmed. Isnelda said, "Floatina, I told the guy to hold on." He told her not to be afraid, assuring her that everything would be fine, and now the two of them were already floating in the air. Coney carefully wrapped the lady in a cloak. Steam was coming out of her ears. She asked the girl in surprise how she got away from here. She insisted that they were very scared when the bodyguards contacted them. Isnelda apologized for waking them up, but the maid told the lady that that was not the case. Coney asked the girl how her wrist was. She held her hand suspended, showing it with marks from tenacious fingers. The girl assured that everything was fine with her, but she agreed that from the outside it looked simply scary, and the maid really wanted to scold her. The knight held Isnelda in his arms, and she held him tightly by the neck, wrapping her arms around it from behind. They soared high enough beyond the reach of those walking on the ground with their feet. The guy asked her if she could lower them to that roof, indicating the direction with a nod of his head. She caught herself and replied that she understood everything. They flew holding tightly to each other. The girl said to herself the levitation spell "flow it," and the guy was preparing to feel reliable support with his foot. The girl pressed herself against the knight's chest and closed her eyes. His cherry cloak and her robes fluttered in the wind. Feet in uniform boots stepped onto the edge of the roof of the nearest tall building, from the scene of the incident. Below, officers shouted, "Stop!" They ordered all armed people to immediately drop their weapons. One attacker told the other to grab their swords and get out of here quickly. Isnelda wondered why they were more worried about their weapons than about their partners. Soon the girl was already standing on the road surface with Edvan, confidently on her own 2 feet, but he still held her by the waist. Her faithful maids were already rushing towards the girl as fast as they could, and from afar shouted words of greeting and fear to their mistress. Murpha said the lady might be in trouble, because she used an empty magic stone, but she has not yet been registered in the magic tower. She assured that she would sort it out herself, and she was advised to go to the hotel with Coney before she was discovered. And Coney was already dragging the girl by the hand, inviting them to hurry up even before the officers arrived. The knight asked to wait a second. The girl became wary and froze in place. The guy asked her if she might know Isnelda Crunche. The girl was surprised and scared that Ed finally recognized her. She thought this was just a great opportunity to speak out to him. Confirmed that she is Isnelda and returned after 7 years. Her boyfriend was approaching. He grabbed her hand sharply and brought her palm to his face, repeated, "Isnelda Crunche." The magic stone on the girl's cloak began to glow. Now the girl was filled with completely different emotions than a minute before. The guy was persistent and aggressive. He squeezed her hand painfully just above the wrist. Garrick's words sounded in the girl's head. "Isnelda, why did you do this? Are you going to send another letter?" The chains bound her body, just as they had during her cousin's aggression. The girl, reliving that horror, began to shout, "Let me go!" And she gave Edvan a resounding slap in the face. Then she herself didn't understand how it happened to her by itself, almost as if automatically. And she was even a little scared and regretted what she had done. Isnelda asked the guy to forgive her. She insisted that she was really sorry that this happened by accident. Coney carefully applied a bag of ice to the mistress's wrist. She could not even think that Edwin was so cruel. But now I saw everything with my own eyes, and tears were welling up. The girl assured that everything was fine and it was just an accident. She assured that this bruise would go away in less than a day. The maid admitted that she and Murpha knew about the mistress's childhood from Mr. Noah, but they didn't tell her anything. After all, servants should not interfere in such things. So she and Murpha, instead of being subordinate, wanted the mistress to understand that the capital is a very pleasant place, but sometimes you need to be more careful. The maid continued that Mr. Azant wanted the lady to stand firmly on her own 2 feet and not be under the protection of the Crunche Foundation. That's why he told them to address her as Madam and not Miss. And since now the girl has become the owner of the Crunche Foundation, she should get used to such treatment. Isnelda thought to herself that she somehow didn't really believe that Mr. Azant wanted her to become independent. And she wondered how she could do this herself, if all she had been doing since her arrival in the capital was shopping, eating, and sleeping. The girl checked with Coney. Does she consider her a good employer? She asked how many things she should learn about with their help. The maid asked if she knew what the main quality of an employer is. The girl made a perplexed pantomime. Coney continued that all she had to do was take care of the vacation and salaries of her subordinates. and she asked not to think that Murpha would respond in kind. Isnelda stood up, straightening up and straightening her back with effort. She announced a salary of 20 mara per day each, daily accommodation and meals. They sat on the floor on their knees with their legs bent. The room was illuminated by a table lamp. The girl's face was shining, and the maid was a little confused. Isnelda insisted that she would like them both to become her personal maids. Coney caught every sound of the mistress. She soon answered in the affirmative, corrected later that it was a good offer. She assured that upon Murpha's return, he would ask her opinion on this matter. Our heroine realized that owners of large fortunes need people. After all, just as a king has subjects, aristocrats have servants, and the king of demons who own gold and silver has loyal servants. She believed that Coney and Murpha would become her right hand, her faithful people, and she shook the maid's hand, sealing the rental agreement. Evening was falling over the Bantar estate. Clouds covered the sky. The yard was deserted, the windows were not lit. A guy in a black cloak with a hood was lying on the sofa, his right hand resting comfortably under his head. In his left, he held an open book with a bright cover. The guy was reading the book, 100 Saddest Stories of This World. In his ear was an earring with a gray magic stone. Long bangs fell into her eyes from under her hood. He said that there are so many tragedies happening in the world. People cannot pay off their debts and are selling their last belongings. He read that if a kitten died in the cold, it was a reward for surviving the time in the deadly cold. This guy's name was Rodion. He was a magician of sadness. Also sobbing, he agreed with the statement that endless overtime, lost weekends, lost vacations are a reward for those who have bad relationships in the family. The girl called Garrick. She asked her brother where this guy had gone. Bursting into the office, she asked her uncle if he had seen her younger brother. But there was a young guy in the office with his uncle. He wiped away his tears, lamenting the harsh reality that the lonely bachelor is now called uncle. Sania did not pay attention to Rodion. She asked her uncle if he had seen the person who came to their house and took their things yesterday. That there was a special ring. The uncle clarified which one of the 10, and the girl was wondering whether to say that this was a graduate's ring. Rodion complained that it had been so noisy since the morning. Baron Bantar claimed that idiot Garrick took everything, and now it was useless to look for him with his sister's rings. The guy argued that an ordinary person would pawn something valuable at a pawn shop to pay for the house, but they have nothing left. And her second brother was expelled from home, began to drink away his grief, and then took revenge and hit the jackpot. Rodin summarized his monologue and asked the girl, where does she think the ring might be now? A fat man with many magical rings on almost every finger was sitting on an easy chair. He was unhappy that the guy didn't find out who the girl was, and Edwin's soul defeated him. He was almost lying on the floor in a bow. I told the gentleman that he was very sorry. On the wall hung a deer skull with antlers, and around them there were decorations with magic stones. The man assured that he didn't care what happened there, and he did not want to allow bad rumors about himself. He was a rich and wealthy man who gave magical weapons to his subordinate mercenaries, but now he considered them simple amateurs. The guy was sitting on the floor in front of the gentleman. He assured that she had, of course, cleaned up all traces of herself. The man claimed that he was furious, and I would like to cut off all his fingers for every mistake he made. He claimed that he did not have time for this. After all, he really wanted to play with his beauties. 2 young girls surrounded the fat man and began to caress and kiss him. The man said that in this way he was going to cut off one thing for speed. For example, language. And he showed his in a grimace. The guy begged the gentleman to forgive him this time. He insisted that he learned something important instead. The fat and bald gentleman was making fun of himself. He assured that he would listen to his last words that came out of his mouth. I was ready to listen before I cut it off yet. The guy said that the girl Noah Azent arrived with was a sorceress. The gentleman was sure that it was Mr. Azent's duty to search for and educate magicians throughout the country. The guy claimed that she didn't look young enough to join the academy. The fat gentleman thought it was strange that the girl was old enough to become an applicant, but was a sorceress. Noah brought her to a hotel and assigned bodyguards and servants to protect her. The man guessed who this girl was. There were rumors about her, and it seemed that he could even see her. But she was definitely not a sorceress. He remembered that he then decided for himself that she would be useless to him and simply forgot about her existence. And now he was beginning to regret his rash decision. The ring received a message to the gentleman from the southeastern branch. The yellow stone of the ring on the index finger of his right hand activated. The bald fat man asked why they were reporting something that was happening on the other side of the country to him, and not to their main boss. They said stone by stone that the gentleman might be interested in this. Reported that one drunk customer asked to exchange his jewelry instead of money for chips. They made concessions to him. And among those things there was one unique ring. It looked like the kind given to academy graduates. And the speaker checked by putting it on. It fit exactly in size and was magical. The gentleman wondered how this ring could get outside the capitals. I asked my interlocutor to send him that ring to complement his collection. The speaker also clarified that there is a name on the ring and a fairly well-known one. The bald man automatically asked what the name was. They answered him stone by stone. Edvin Sol. The fat gentleman remembered that next month the Crunche Foundation is holding a grand charity evening. This clearly made him happy. After all, Edwin Sol was the most famous person in Thebes. Any girl from a noble society would like to get his graduation ring as a knight of the Imperial Academy, the most talked-about person in the capital. The man slammed his fist on the chair rail. He said that he would present this ring at an upcoming charity auction. The morning dawn was breaking over the hotel. The rising sun gilded the light cirrus clouds. Nothing disturbed the peace. And our heroine rubbed her sleepy eyes. She recalled the details of last night, and she couldn't believe herself that she could have confused Garrick with Edvan and slapped him in the face. She was still dizzy from everything that had befallen her then. Her cloak fell away, revealing her bare shoulders with the thin straps of her night robe. Isnelda had a mess in her head. Her thoughts were confused, not allowing her to concentrate on one thing. Maid Coney saw that something was wrong with her mistress and asked herself a question. The girl remembered how Ed looked so furious then. She made the assumption that there was something that made the guy hate her so much. And I wanted to know the reason for it. She thought she could just call him. And she was ready to pick up the card with the password for his magic stone. Suddenly there was a knock on the door of the room. Coney assumed it was Murpha who brought the sandwiches. Isnelda assured that she would go and see it herself. She put down the piece of paper with Ed's number on it. I told myself that I would stop thinking about it. She still needed to mentally prepare for their meeting. I thought it was better to wait and watch. Opening the door, the girl buried her nose right into a huge bouquet of flowers. Edwin himself brought them to her. The guy confidently handed the armful straight into the hands of the confused girl. Many roses were bordered by lonely lupine candles. The knight confidently told her, "Hello." His fresh starched shirt stood out cheerfully with the ironed edges of his collar. Edwin assured the girl that he never stopped thinking about her. So I just couldn't wait any longer. He asked Miss Gray to forgive him, and he promised that he would no longer allow yesterday's mistakes. He asked if she would go out with him so he could make amends. The girl was extremely surprised. Ed assured her that he fell in love with her at first sight. And 3 months ago on Glen 13th Street, 2 guys and a girl were sitting outside the door of a bar. In that bar, Edvin was just drinking an alcoholic drink with a friend. The guys were already pretty drunk. The third in green clothes brazenly approached and put his unfinished glass on their table. He began to talk about the difference between high society and the mob. He asked about the taste of alcohol that plebeians drink. Edvin didn't show it, but his friend started right away. He shouted at him to watch his language. The impudent man approached Ed from behind. The knight asked if he had heard anything, demonstrating complete calm. The uninvited guest snatched the bottle from Ed's friend's hands. He was furious that he was being ignored, and he began to pour its contents onto the guy's head. The fair-haired guy was furious. He called the newcomer a scumbag, and soon a fight broke out. At some point, the fighters were on the street. The guy in green was lying on the road, and Edvin, restraining his friend, asked him to calm down. He struggled, claiming that he had not yet shown enough manners of politeness. The knight assured his friend that if the guards came, they would be at a disadvantage with him as commoners, and he assured him that he needed to leave here as quickly as possible. He assured that it was enough to deal with the imbecile. He urged us to look for the carriage together and get out of here as quickly as possible. But then the guards had already arrived. The aristocrat, lying on his shoulder blades, called on them to help and arrest the villains who were attacking him. The guard who arrested Ed recognized him. He knew that the guy was preparing to become a knight, and he was surprised that he made such a fuss. That same day, Edwan was accused of assault, ending his career as a knight. And while Noah, together with the Foundation's lawyers, tried to resolve the case, which they wanted to make public. but there was hope. The girl asked Edwin to give her a graduation ring, and she promised to sort out all his problems. It was Marquise Vicentos. According to the verdict of the first court, Edwin was given a travel ban for 5 months. And it was, no matter how you look at it, a rather mild punishment. Azent told the guy in the office that he had not been recognized as a criminal, but now he would be closely monitored, and he would like the guy to be found innocent at the second court hearing. Noah heard that the Vicentos were intermediaries in the falsification of evidence, and they were friendly with the Crunche Foundation. The charity evening was approaching, and the investigations and suspicions could backfire on them. Edwin understood from Azent's words that there was no reason to quarrel with the Vicentos on the eve of a charity evening. Noah confirmed. He claimed that this family makes one of the largest donations. The blonde assured Edvon that this did not mean that he had to go to Lady Vicentos right now, and he simply asked to show concern for her. The guy insisted that it was not funny at all. He held back his emotions but clenched his fists. Noah claimed that the charity event was just around the corner, that a second trial is coming, and it's just a matter of small things. The weather was good and the sea was calm. On the shore, not far from the shore, there is a small mansion hidden in the greenery of the garden. This was the Crunche estate. The halls and rooms were striking in their cleanliness and freshness. I couldn't even believe that no one had lived here for so long, and the house had been empty for so many years. Isnelda went down the steps. Everything looked the same as 7 years ago. The girl went into her room. In the middle of her lay a carpet with her children's toys, and there were fresh flowers in a vase. She went out onto the balcony. The waves rhythmically rolled onto the sand and retreated back. The girl had been terrified of water since the shipwreck. And now, even the sight of a quiet driver still frightened her. She realized that she had never been able to find a house that she liked. Therefore, I decided to return here to my father's place, which has been so dear to me since childhood. Noah asked the 2-year-old why she felt so uneasy. Azent assured the girl that there was a lot to be done here. She was surprised that there was not a speck of dust here. Noah admitted that not long ago his assistant was here and arranged everything for their arrival. The girl was surprised that he could respect her father so much. Then Isnelda's gaze fell on the dressing table. On it lay a toy that her dad made for a girl a long time ago. Then he said that he was very glad that he had such a princess. He touched the star and it suddenly flared up and began to shine. The girl assumed that her father was a magician of joy, and now she wondered what the source of her strength was. She remembered using magic for the first time at Senia's debut party the day before her birthday, when she met Mr. Azent. For the second time in the capital, magic spontaneously arose when she saw Edwin in a dream. And the third time this happened in the hotel apartment, when I saw Edwin in person. And then she used a stone imbued with magic, which she herself did not know about. For the fourth time, she deliberately used magic to levitate in Edwin's arms. It turned out that most of the times her magical abilities manifested themselves next to Ed, but the first one should not be excluded either. Isnelda focused her gaze on Noah. She asked to give her your hand for a minute. She assured me that it was nothing like that, and just trust her and fulfill her request. The man extended his hand to her in a snow-white glove. The girl thought that when she first awakened as a sorceress, Mr. Azent was nearby, and she hoped that her guess was correct. But nothing happened. The girl was even a little upset. She said it was enough. Mr. Azent asked her what she wanted to do that didn't work out. Isnelda said that was not the case and thanked you for your help. The man asked if this was an experiment. The girl sat up on the bed and leaned back. She reminded Noah that she needed to find the source of her emotions. So she experiments. He said that they reported to him that she used magic around Ed. He asked if he could do something too. The man began to take off his gloves. First, he wanted to warn the girl that she might feel a little awkward. He asked that if she became too uncomfortable, she could feel free to hit him, kick him, or simply speak out. Noah carefully took the girl by the tips of her fingers. He looked her straight in the eyes without blinking through the lenses of his glasses. He told her that in 3 weeks there would be a charity evening for the Crunche Foundation. Isnelda's ears perked up, becoming all attention. Noah said that if she was willing to participate, he was willing to formally introduce her as Isnelda Crunch, Mr. Crunch's daughter. He claimed, holding her hand, that almost the entire high society of Thebes would gather, and no matter how uncomfortable she is, all attention will be focused on her. The girl asked again that this was a hint that someone with unclean intentions might approach her. Noah assured her that she was a beautiful girl with a grand inheritance. Isnelda asked Mr. if he would like her to go there. He answered rather vaguely, leaving the girl to choose. He said that there are two types of jewelry. Some were intended for the public in order to demonstrate their value. Others were carefully hidden so that no one could get their hands on them. And if she wants to live a calm and measured life, then it is better not to admit that she is Isnelda Crunchy in front of so many people. The girl retorted that she was not a jewel but a living person, and she promised to have as little contact with the nobles as possible. Azent agreed to let it happen as she pleased. She wondered what kind of experiment it was. He asked her to look at her hand. The star on the stick was still shining. Noah stated that his theory was that magic occurs when a girl comes into contact with a person by concentrating on him. After all, if it were only a matter of feelings towards Edwin, the magic would have awakened even before she left for the Benar estate. The man insisted that this was just his guess. Therefore, I advised you to experiment with Edvin a couple more times. This was the best way to determine her potential. Isnelda did not understand what the words meant, that she might become uncomfortable, making the assumption that if the wand hadn't glowed, he would have done something else. Noah, leaving the room, said that it was time for him to go. Why did he suddenly remember that he needed to contact the fund? And he turned to leave. But the girl demanded that he answer her question before leaving. Isnelda jumped up and called Mr. Noah Azent, but he had already left, clicking the door lock. Afterwards, she began to look at the star on a stick and ponder Azent's words about magical abilities and contact with someone. And upon arrival at the hotel, a surprise awaited our heroine. In the middle of the corridor, Edvin stood waiting for her with a bouquet of flowers. He greeted Miss Gray with a smile. The guy was complimenting the girl, noticing that blue suits her very well. The girl reminded him that she had already said that she would not go on a date, and she suggested looking for another partner. The guy said he couldn't do that she is his only one. Isnelda coldly assumed that he said this to all the girls. Edvin insisted that he addressed only those in whom he was most interested. She looked him straight in the eyes. He also watched her reaction, and he suggested that she liked his face. The girl was shocked. She accused the guy of being overly self-confident. Ed made the excuse that the girl herself was looking at him very intently. She claimed that he was too arrogant. That's why she looked like that. Isnelda insisted that she did not like frivolous men, as well as recklessly persistent ones. The guy asked to tell him what kind of partner would suit her, or at least hint so that he guesses. But the girl paused. Suddenly, a blond man who had come from nowhere began to hug Edvin from behind. Ed tried to brush him off like an annoying fly. He did not pay attention to his friend's reluctance to communicate with him now, and asked him what he was doing here and what he was so busy with. It was Veril, the second son of the Fontaine family, Edwin answered evasively, and he assured that if he understood everything, he asked him not to pester him, but rather to pretend that they did not know each other at all. The blonde just noticed the girl and assured that he had not seen her here before. Veril complimented the girl and said that he was glad to meet her. Ed asked his friend to leave, but he called his friend a beach. I asked him to take him for a walk too. Then the blonde began to suggest having dinner together. He assured Ed that all their classmates would be there. Edvin reminded that he was generally busy with serious matters here and asked not to disturb him. Isnelda clarified that this was a meeting of all graduates of the Imperial Academy. Veril assured the girl that it did not matter at all that she was not from their academy, and if you go with them, it will be a great date. He noted that they would be interested in being the same age. Ed pushed his friend's ear. I ordered him to stop. He insisted that he and the girl had no intention of going with him. But Isnelda unexpectedly replied, "Okay." She was sure that dating alone would be burdensome, but if there were more of them, that would be better. The 3-story building was located near the park. A hubbub could be heard from the open window. The guy asked Miss Gray where she was from. The guy in the green shirt confidently asserted that their charming guest was definitely not from Tebas. The rest of the guys were sitting on the couch opposite her, huddled together in a tight group. Isnelda claimed that she used to live here. But I just recently returned from the province. Another guy, he was the fattest in this company, asked her. She is passing through or has moved to a permanent place. Another one boldly asked whether the girl was dating someone. And if not, does he have a chance to take a place next to him? His friend pulled him back, which was so indecent. Isnelda thought that although there wasn't a crowd of guys, it was somehow too much. She liked that they were all friendly, and Edvin talked and made friends with all of them. Edvin drew attention to himself and, leaning his hand on the table, said that enough questions and now it was his turn. The guys pulled him back. They blamed him for wanting to get a girl for himself. Others also supported the speaker. They asked Ed to give everyone the opportunity to talk to the girl. Edwan pointed his finger and said that Vertel started playing poker there. The guys went, and Ed plopped down on the sofa opposite the girl. He offered her food, and she realized that he deliberately distracted them because he noticed that she didn't even put a bite in her mouth. A whole roasted bird stood untouched on the table. Salads with fresh vegetables and herbs, desserts with nuts and candied fruits. Isnelda offered the guy something to eat too, but he replied that he had no appetite now. The girl asked in surprise why this was so. Ed, making a sad pantomime, claimed that the loss of appetite was due to her reluctance to go on a date only with him. But the girl found it hard to believe. She asked since when he had been friends with Vertel. He answered that he had been around since he was 7 years old, that I met him when I went to the academy, and then he looked like a good friend. By the way, Edvin asked how it was about Isnelda. The girl asked him who this Isnelda Crunchy is. In her thoughts, she asked who she was to him. Suddenly, an alarmed Vertel appeared next to them. He stammered and said that they had a problem. Ed asked his friend to explain to them what happened. "The princess has come," answered the out-of-breath blonde guy, and you could hear the clicking of women's heels on the floor tiles. "The young marquise, Lady Larote Vicentos, has arrived." She raised her hand in greeting. She said that she was glad to see everyone. Isnelda was surprised by the chic dress on the lady who entered. She was surprised by the possibility that it was all made of precious stones. Lady Larote also soon paid attention to the new girl in the already established and familiar company of guys. Edvan immediately changed his face and went to meet the marquise who had appeared. The guy assured that he did not know about her arrival in such a modest place. Isnelda did not understand what had changed so dramatically without attention. Vicentos simply called the guy Ed and threw herself into his arms in front of everyone. Isnelda took her breath away from such a frank scene right in front of her, and most of the guys present. Edwin restrainedly told the marquise that everyone was looking at them, but the girl assured him that she had come to meet him, and she didn't care who was looking at them. But the guy assured her that it would have been better to choose another place and time for this. The girl told the guy that he still couldn't meet her, and she simply had no other choice but to come to him in person. Fertile thought to himself how the marquise could have appeared. After all, he didn't even invite her. Then how could she find out about the party? And wondered what they should do now. A girl in a luxurious dress with white lace and unusually colored curly hair openly hugged Edwin. Isnelda, observing this whole picture from the side, asked herself the question, what kind of relationship was there between the Marchioness and Ed? Vicentos looked over the guy's shoulder. By the way, she asked him what kind of girl was hiding behind him. He replied that she was an invited guest of Virel Fontaine. The marquise was surprised that she had never seen her before. Edwin politely introduced the girl to Miss Edith Gray. Isnelda sat on the sofa, not even imagining how to behave in such a situation, and how to properly greet her. Our heroine thought it was worth shaking hands, but then I changed my mind, thinking that it would look very awkward. She replied that she was pleased to meet you. The young ladies stood opposite each other, looking at their rival point blank, and between them, Edvin stood a little to the side, ready to intervene at any moment. The marquise claimed that she seemed to have misunderstood something, and judging by the girl's outfit, she was not one of those who knew good manners. Isnelda could not understand what was wrong with her clothes. Vicentos admitted that she did not know all the aristocrats by sight, and she asked the girl where her mansion was located. Ed claimed that Miss asks a lot of questions during the first minutes of meeting her. The marquise was feignedly horrified. She was surprised that Ed called her rude. She insisted that she had met Miss Gray for the first time, and she didn't consider it rude to ask where she came from. And if anything happened, I was ready to apologize. The girl asked Miss Gray what she thought about this. She asked if she was offended by the question she had just asked. Isnelda decided, since she was asked, what she can definitely tell the nobles is that she is an ordinary commoner, because I had already lived surrounded by them for 7 years, and she knew perfectly well what they wanted to hear. She answered the Marquise that she did not know the etiquette of aristocrats and did not know what rudeness was, but it was obvious that the lady did not want to offend her. Therefore, she accepted her apology with joy. The guys started talking, and Varel himself was most surprised by this turn of events. Vicentos narrowed her eyes, but then she started smiling almost immediately. She casually asked Miss Grey for forgiveness for her rudeness. She asked if she would accept them. The girl answered in the affirmative. Through the balcony window, Isnelda saw how the Marquise and Edouin were having a pleasant conversation while being as close to each other as possible. She considered this attitude towards her dishonest. After all, he told her that he was in love. And now I saw what a liar he really is. Varel was already in a hurry to join the girl. As he approached, he called her by name, deliberately distracting her from contemplating through the window the intimate details of his friend's communication with the Marquise. He expressed his surprise at how coolly the girl spoke to Lady Vicentos. The girl asked the guy to call her by name without miss, because they were the same age as him. He was pleasantly surprised. Isnelda claimed that those guys seemed friendly, but in fact she and him were the only ones who observed any manners. The guy told Edith that he really liked her. He suggested forgetting about Edvan, and he asked her to answer how he was her boyfriend. The girl was surprised how they still communicate normally. The guy spread his hands. He said that Ed always follows him, and he always helps him in a friendly way. And while they were alone, Varel wanted to tell the girl something, that she should be careful around Lady Vicentos. He asked if she knew why the Marquise could be near Edvan all the time, and then he explained it to her, that only she had a certain power, because of which she could be with Ed. He said that the Marquise's maternal grandfather was a famous archmage, and he can destroy an entire city with any click. Isnelda clarified that we are talking about the archmage Pratio. The guy confirmed this, and he said that therefore the girl does not even have to keep track of who Edvan communicates with. She still knows that he will be hers. Varel sighed and insisted that he would like his friend to meet a kind and beautiful girl, and so that he would completely forget about his first love. Isnelda asked about this in more detail. The guy realized that he had let it slip, having lost control of himself. I asked the girl not to tell Ed about it. She asked him to tell him who that lucky girl was, but the blonde argued that he could not say her name, revealing a secret that was not his. Then Isnelda asked him to at least say when Edvan began to like that girl. Varel couldn't say for sure either. All I could say was that they had separated. That a letter arrived 3 months ago. The beloved wrote to the guy, and Ed immediately went to the bar after that. And then over alcohol, a friend told him that his beloved would soon marry someone else. He asked her to wait until the end of the final exam and meet in person one last time, but they never met since Ed was given a ban on leaving Thebes. The girl clarified why he was punished. Varel said that his friend therefore felt lousy because of the inability to meet his first love who would soon be married. Isnelda thought that Ed had stopped answering her letters, and now his love ended with that girl marrying someone else. The carriage pulled up to the front door and creaked to a stop. The girl thanked Varel for sharing this story with her, but since her carriage had already arrived, she said that it was time for her to return. The girl was heading towards the door of the carriage. The guy reminded her that she didn't say goodbye to Ed. She retorted that he, as his friend and host of the party, could well tell him that she had already left. Meanwhile, Edouin was looking out of the window. He saw the girl approach the carriage door. With a sharp movement of his hand, he pulled back the curtain and opened the window frame to the street. Leaning out waist-deep from the window, he peered at the disappearing silhouette of the girl in the carriage. He paid attention to her characteristic gestures. After the carriage left, he was in a state of deep thought. For some time, the Marquise did not dare to approach and bring him out of this trance. She noticed that Ed was sadder than usual. Meanwhile, in the carriage, our heroine was also reflecting on the information she had heard from Varel. Mr. Noah Azant said indifferently that his personal consultation costs 30 mares per hour. The girl asked the maid Coney, and she hurriedly took something out of the pocket of her dress. Soon in her hand was a small pouch with clanking coins in it. Isnelda told the man that he didn't have to give her the change. He claimed that the missus had become very skillful in spending money. She retorted that it was all thanks to someone. Noah said that Edouin is now under investigation, that initially everything should have happened quietly, but things got complicated because he was the only candidate for the Imperial Guard among the graduates. Azant continued that after this the guy was stuck in Thebes where Miss Vicentos proposed to him. According to him, The girl suggested that Edwin give her his graduation ring and then she would become his sponsor and his punishment would be lifted. Isnelda clarified that this could be done by his sponsor. The man answered in the affirmative. He said that in this case the sponsor becomes a trustee. Noah summarized that the situation in which Edwin found himself after that incident locked him within the walls of Thebes. Our heroine thought. She wondered if Lady Vicentos knew about the existence of the man Ed liked. This meant that in order to get Edwin, she prevented him from meeting his first love who was about to get married. Isnelda asked the result, that if only 2 trials are opened, then a ruling will be made. She hoped that the guy would be released. The girl wondered if she could do something. After all, Lady Vicentos really thinks that she can do as she pleases, and all because she is a noblewoman by birth. Mr. Ozant sipped his tea calmly and with the dignity of a lion. The girl asked him, what did she need to do to make Edwin's case successful? 3 days later, the famous magical carriage without horses stopped at a jewelry store. Mr. Ozant, accompanied by young Isnelda, walked along the hallway of the hall. The girl looked at the situation around her with her mouth open in surprise. A guy, a shop assistant in a green vest with a gold pattern, greeted him and motioned for Mr. Ozant to go into one of the store's halls. A man and a girl were sitting next to the table. He asked her if she was really going to the charity evening. She answered in the affirmative. After all, I heard that Edwin would go there with Lady Vicentos. Noah offered to give her a place to talk alone with Edwin if she wanted. The girl thanked him, and she asked why they came here. Ozant first wanted to apologize to the girl. After all, usually a couturier is hired to make a dress who will select the design. The guy stood next to the box in his hands. Noah continued the thought that in such a short time it will be difficult to get the dress ready for the date of the evening. And because of this, he had to choose a ready-made dress for her. The box lay on the table, and the guy quickly but carefully opened its lid. A delicate dress with airy lace and gold embroidery was carefully laid there. The man said that money can be turned into anything. This can be either a weapon or armor. But no matter how good her weapon is, if she does not know how to use it, its value is halved. Ozant argued that the best solution was to find a way to use this weapon. He admitted that he was not sure what she would ultimately decide on this matter. But today, he was going to push her to answer. The thick curtain opened. Noah still sat in his chair with the calmness of an iceberg. The girl tried on the dress and went out in it to appear in front of the man. Isnelda felt extremely awkward in it. She walked to the nearest mirror. Looking at her reflection in it, she admitted to herself that it was the first time she had seen such a beautiful dress. The girl wondered, why did she look so ridiculous in that outfit? She admitted that it was through her non-aristocratic origins. The man stepped on the platform in front of the mirror. He took the girl by the shoulders and pulled them back a little. I asked her to keep her back straight. He told her to constantly watch her posture, that you should lift your chin up a little higher. Isnelda caught his every word and tried to do everything exactly. Now she stood in front of the mirror with a straight back and raised head. Noah begged him to be allowed to continue. He touched her back in the waist area. I asked the girl to tilt her head back slightly and tense your body in your lower abdomen, slightly lifting your body up. Now Isnelda stood in front of the mirror and saw her reflection completely differently. The man praised her for her diligence. Ozant held the girl by the shoulders and asked her not to bend them, but to hold them more naturally. And finally he asked me to raise my head. He adjusted the position of her head. Noah looked appraisingly at Isnelda. He said that now everything was right, that the clothes suit her. But the reason why nobles look like nobles is because of their looks. The girl asked how much such a service cost and expressed her willingness to pay for it. Mr. Noah Ozant assured Isnelda Cruncha that this was his friendly gift today to the daughter of his teacher and patron. But he promised to tell her the price, and he began to whisper in her ear. The girl was surprised at the price of the dress. The man assured that this was the cost of the dress itself and its design. Noah said he bought dresses from the same brand so he could wear them next year. This design was originally intended to become popular next year. He pointed with his hand at a row of mannequins in dresses, and he assured her that only she would have a dress of this design. Noah believed that at the very least she deserved the dress she was going to wear. He helped the girl get off the podium in front of the mirror. The evening cast shadows over the luxurious palace, and the carriages kept driving up the paths to his main entrance. A woman's toga in light shoes stepped onto the carriage step, gently clicking her heels. The hem of the light dress fluttered, glistening with precious stones. The girl left the carriage. She carried her head like a crowned head, and her gaze was unreadable. The day before the charity evening itself, the well-known horseless carriage stopped at the entrance and the coachman sat waiting. Isnelda and her maids were extremely surprised when they opened the package from the courier. The maid suspected that this was the set of Tears of Hera that was put up for auction last year. Isnelda could not believe it and asked the maids again. Murpha confirmed that she remembers how Noah himself won the tender for the highest price. The maid said that since it was a women's accessory, she expected it to be sold somewhere, and I didn't expect to see him here again. Isnelda admitted to herself that she had a strange feeling. The kit was accompanied by a document. It is possible to use the high-level spell Celt, magic that enhances the magical effect. Isnelda was amazed at this decoration. Coney asked the lady if she had heard the news. She had heard that a rumor had leaked about an auction item listing for an upcoming charity event. The girl became all ears. The maid assured her that the Imperial Academy's graduation ring had been presented. Isnelda dreamily asked who did this to Coney, and she called the name of Ser Edwana Sol. The girl immediately became alarmed. And now his beloved and only daughter came out of the carriage to the Crunche Foundation, founded by her father. Isnelda walked down the corridor to the banquet hall, accompanied by both of her faithful maids. Her heels clicked confidently on the tiles of the floor. And from the balcony, 3 children looked at everything that was happening, 2 boys and 1 girl. Murpha said that the foundation runs an orphanage, where children take part in the annual charity evening, and those of them who were not selected as fellows tried to find a guardian. She said it might be hard to look at it with a smile. Iselda was determined. She told herself that it was better not to look at them, just as Murpha had advised her. The boy had an eye patch and the girl looked very sad. The girl convinced herself that she would stop thinking. She began to look around the performance hall. After all, the whole hall turned into a flower garden. After all, every year at a charity evening, prestigious wizards put on a grandiose and fantastic performance. Last year, the Archmage Marquis Vicentos spoke, and this year they announced that Miss Vicentos will show herself in all her glory. The girl was dancing with Edwin Saul in the middle of the banquet hall. It seemed that all the decorations on the dress were magic stones. The couple performed a graceful move for all to see. People were whispering. One was surprised that this was really the granddaughter of the Archmage Vicentos. The other couldn't believe how she could show stable fantasy magic over such a wide range. Edwin's face was unreadable. Marquise Vicentos looked at him with a loving gaze. People whispered that it was a pity that the girl was not the next candidate for the title of head of the Vicentos family. Isnelda heard all these whispers. She mentally asked Ed, did he really take off the ring? She assumed that he deliberately put it up for auction because he was not choosing Miss Vicentos, but was looking for another candidate. Isnelda touched the flower that decorated the staircase railing. She was surprised that he was not real either. Here her hand fell into the palm of a white-gloved hand. The cuff was from a white suit with thick gold embroidery. Mr. Azent quietly said Celtra, and in the girl's hand there was already a snow-white rose flower. She asked in surprise how he did it. The man also had the same rose in his hand. The girl asked Noah excitedly, did he hear that Edwin's graduation ring is being auctioned today? He held the girl's hand at attention and assured her that he knew a lot and that too. He was getting ready to dance with a girl. Soon Isnelda was dancing with a tall blonde man in glasses. He skillfully led her in the dance, gently holding her waist. The girl said that according to rumors it is not necessary to dance here. Noah suggested that she pretend they were dancing. Azent argued that there was nothing better than talking together under such circumstances. Our heroine was not very good at dancing, and in front of the eyes of the aristocratic public, she began to stammer and get confused in her movements. Noah told her to look at him and not at her feet. Isnelda insisted that she simply could not do this. Azent whispered, "Flow it," and the girl began to float easily. Now he circled it at his own discretion. Noah asked the fluttering girl if she felt better this way. She was still a little confused. She remembered that they had talked about the ring. I asked why it was here. And was this a conscious decision by Edwan? Azent claimed that another person had that ring, and it is difficult to cancel this auction item because he did not put it up for public auction. But instead, a condition was set that from the very beginning the idea was to make it part of an event organized by the foundation, that no matter who buys the ring, it will be returned. In return, you can ask Edvin for one thing you want. Isnelda also asked Azent if she could just buy the ring. He replied that it would be quite difficult. Edwan and Marquise Vicentos danced around. The ribbons of the bow from her dress trailed along the floor of the hall. Many other couples were dancing nearby. When there was a pause in the dancing, his friend Virel hurried to Ed. He was anxiously asking why his ring was being put up for auction today. The guy said that he himself had just found out, and he was told that this was for donations that guests would make by participating in today's event. The blonde couldn't believe that Edwin himself had just found out about this. He said that his joke was more like nonsense. He suspected that someone simply stole his graduation ring. Edvin said that he didn't do it, that he suspects that this could have been done by the one to whom he gave his ring. And he looked with regret at the Azent-Isneld couple who were carefree dancing. The girl asked why she couldn't just buy a ring. Mr. Azent assured her that it was quite difficult, but she couldn't understand why this was so. After all, she herself could have won the auction and returned the ring to Edvin. Noah assured her that Lord Pelef would want to win, and he was a real gambling, experienced and wealthy player. He said that in any case, everything should have been decided at the auction. I advised her to enjoy the evening for now. The girl claimed that Ed was her friend, and although she herself was not from the Foundation, she could not just sit still. The man agreed. However, he asked her to take into account that if she wanted to participate in the auction, he asked her to convince Edvin of this. Although I thought that he would be against it, but if the guy gives his consent, he agreed to help her in everything that was required of him. Noah claimed that if she turned around now, she would see Edwin and Miss Vicentos, and he again cast the levitation spell Floet and spun the girl to face away from him. Mr. Azent assured her, releasing her hand, that he would have Miss Vicentos's full attention. And he advised Isnelda to go dance with Edvin, or go somewhere with him and retire to talk. Isnelda remained standing by herself, a little confused by the rapid turn of events, and Mr. Azent was already dancing at ease with Miss Vicentos. The Marquise complimented the man, admiring him. Edvin only now noticed the presence of a girl at this evening. He asked her in surprise what she was doing here. The guy was approaching and the girl was calling him. She understood that she had to convince him before the bidding began to allow her to participate in the auction herself. But then a bald fat man with many magic rings on his fingers grabbed her hand and attracted her to dance. He said, smiling, that he was incredibly lucky to have the opportunity to dance with such a lady. The earrings and decoration on his butterfly were also made of magic stones, and the smile revealed a gold tooth. Edvin began dancing with another girl in pairs, but he did not take his eyes off Isnelda, not for a second losing sight of her. He wondered what the old man and the high heel swayed. The girl involuntarily groaned. Edwin was furious that the fat man would allow himself to do this. He asked Miss to excuse him and quickly went to the girl to help. The bald man was smiling and telling Isnelda something, but from a distance it was difficult to understand the topic of their conversation. The man did most of the talking. He looked the girl in the eyes and behaved quite confidently and brazenly even from the outside. Isnelda was only surprised and upset by his remarks. But then Edvin, catching a lucky moment, pulled the girl towards him with a deft movement of his hand. She was surprised, and the guy said that he got the impression that she would dance with that fat lord forever. Valdi said that he was sorry that his dance with Miss was interrupted. It was imagined that his name was Lord Pelef. The man scratched his cheek with a hand with rings on his fingers. He told the girl that if his proposal interested her, he invited her to come. Edvin covered the girl with his hands, as if involuntarily wanting to protect her from this vile type. Soon they were already in the corridor. The guy was surprised that if she couldn't dance, then why couldn't she just leave there? Isnelda assured that she could not leave. The guy asked if she could walk on her own. Her legs were shaking. She claimed that she simply did not have the strength, and my feet were swollen. With a sharp movement, Edvin picked up the light girl under her buttocks and carried her with one hand. Out of fear, she grabbed his shoulder with both hands. The girl asked Ed where he was taking her. He briefly said that there should be a restroom nearby and confidently stomped along the corridor. Soon the door clicked open. The guy carefully seated the young lady on the sofa. She said they didn't have to come here at all. Edwin claimed he was simply trying to cut down on time. What if it becomes known that he was with her for a long time? It might seem like piles in relation to his partner. Isnelda asked the guy who his partner was. He replied that it was the Marquise Laroth Vicentos. The guy bowed and asked her permission to examine her legs. Seeing how she danced, he was sure that she must have been in pain. The girl started to twitch all over. After all, it turned out that he saw everything. She flushed sharply from the emotions that washed over her. She wondered if he should have been more concerned about Lady Vicentos's feet, and she turned her head away from him. He asked if it was normal that she also left her partner. The girl pretended that she did not understand the meaning of his words. Edvan said that he doesn't really like to communicate with him now. The girl clarified who she was talking about. The guy turned his back on her. He suggested that she rest and not go out dancing anywhere else today. The girl grabbed his sleeve. She reported that his ring was confiscated at the casino, and she clarified with him that he didn't do it. She said she didn't know if it was true, but she heard that his graduation ring put up for auction today came from a gaming house in some out-of-the-way place. The girl considered this some kind of misunderstanding, and I asked the guy if he played in a casino, but he replied that she herself knew everything. Isnelda did not understand what he meant. He was surprised but believed. So, if not her, then who could have done this? The girl asked him to stop talking to himself and explain everything to her as it is. The guy said that the ring shown today is real. It didn't come here from the casino, that his friend sent it. The girl saw how the magic stone in the guy's ear began to shine. He asked the girl to wait. Someone called him. Having answered briefly that he would come now, the guy was about to leave. Isnelda was surprised that he was already leaving. As he walked, he told the girl to wait for him here for 5 minutes and not to go anywhere. He promised to return to her soon and continue the conversation. The girl standing in the doorway asked him about the friend who sent the ring. The guy looked at the girl through the door crack and claimed that it was his friend Isnelda Cruncha, and he closed the door with a creak.